No Rider game this week, just lounging in and around Regina. So we got Dave to come in on the cage today. Does it feel a little weird? What are we, 20-some weeks into the season and there's no football this week? Are you trying to figure out what to do with yourself and your schedule?
That's one way to look at the week that has been. And yeah, it does feel a little bit weird. It almost... I don't want to say that the Canadian Football League is like it's on a pause for a week, because really there is one meaningful game when the Toronto Argonauts take on the Ottawa Red Blacks this week. But, of course, everyone here in Riderville is waiting to see what's going to happen next Saturday. That's when Winnipeg, of course, is back on the field with a chance to clinch first place in the West Division. But the Riders have nothing to do except sit, wait, and find out how they're going to approach Calgary.
Hey, thanks for being part of the show today. If you're listening on CKRM or you're watching our stream on X or on YouTube, we appreciate the support. Give us a follow and subscribe. Arash Madani is going to be on the show today after 4 o'clock. We want to get his take on Tom Brady becoming partial owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. Glen Suitor is going to join us after 5. And we'll ask him. He probably, like a lot of us, maybe won't have... as much glowing in-depth insight about that Calgary-Hamilton game that's going to happen tomorrow in the CFL. So we'll ask him about stuff that actually is going to matter. But we're happy to bring somebody back that was with us in the spring all the way through the Stanley Cup final. It's time to go inside the NHL with Eric Francis.
Time now for Inside the NHL with Eric Francis on the all-new Sports Cage. Inside the NHL is brought to you by Southie Mainline, the Mainline Automotive Group's newest king of trucks. Southie Mainline, just 30 minutes north of Regina. Worth the drive every time. Guaranteed.
Welcome back, first of all. Let's see, we're 2 weeks into the season, and the Preds, Avs, Canucks, and Sharks still don't have a win. Edmonton has only one win, but let's start with the crazy Calgary Flames, who you cover. Who had on the bingo card that they start the season 4-0?
Well, first of all, thanks for the produced piece. That's all I ever wanted. Just something official, to kind of, to know, to recognize that I'm here. I'm thrilled to be back with you boys. I really enjoyed it last spring, and I didn't enjoy talking about the Oilers all that much, but hey, that was the story of the day. I'm thrilled to talk about the Oilers right now, and
yes.
But we'll start with the Flames. Yeah, nobody saw this coming, and I think that's partially how they got here. These guys really did take it to heart that, I think it's kind of cliche when athletes are like, yeah, everybody counted us out, so it's us against the world. But I really think there's something to it. And when you're playing with house money, the beauty of it is it's free. Anything that you get is a bonus. So I think that it's just playing with a more relaxed attitude. And plus, the other thing is they went into this season just saying, we have one goal in mind. Yeah, obviously make the playoffs, but we want to be the hardest team in the league to play against. And with that in mind, I think they're going to make it tough on a lot of opponents over the year. And they also have quite a lot of depth that can help them, get some goals and play good hockey. The big thing that's going to be the decider on whether or not they even have a chance of making the playoffs is their goaltending. And so far, the two young kids that are kind of running the show here have been really good, and that's why they're 4-0 more than any other reason.
Okay, I'll put my hand up because I would like to admit that I was wrong. I didn't think the Flames would be 0-82, but I definitely didn't think they'd be 4-0. When you look at the start of this team, who has gone ahead and created this identity, and has it come from the fact that they don't have that cloud hanging over them with all the free agents that they had last year to deal with?
Yeah, that's the last 2 years. The year before, so last year was all the talk about those six. They were cornerstone players that were all on the verge of free agency, and and they all left, and that was a huge distraction and gutting for the teammates to watch them go one by one by one. And the year before, all the talk was, Johnny Gaudreau's gone and Matthew Tkachuk's gone, and who's Huberdeau, and how's Huberdeau going to do? I mean, not whose he is, but how's Weegar going to fare? This year, it's just been quiet. It's been quiet. And so these guys can just focus on proving everybody wrong. And you ask who's kind of chiefly responsible for it. like Michael Backlund, outside of this market, I doubt anybody thinks much of Michael Backlund, but incredible leader, so well respected in the room, and he's formed this leadership group of 6 guys. There's 6 most senior veterans, guys like Uyghur, Anderson, Huberdeau, and they make up this leadership group, and they have meetings on a daily basis, and their whole goal is to try and shape the culture, the work ethic, and teach these youngsters how to be pros as they break into the league. So they're kind of the leaders, and everybody else is following right now.
This is Inside the NHL with Eric Francis from Sportsnet on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline. With a 4-0 start, $18 million in cap space, Craig Conroy, is he the new Billy Beane? What if this turns out to be the NHL version of Moneyball this year, Eric? You're a writer. Are you writing the script? Are you optioning it? And who plays Conroy in the movie?
Oh, my God. I got to ask Conroy who he'd like to play. Everybody always says Pitt, right? Everyone wants to be Pitt.
Yeah, I know.
I hadn't really thought about it. It's got to be someone who talks a lot and never stops. So I'll think about that. It would be a hell of a movie if this team made the playoffs. Listen, it's 4 games in. And,
I know.
Hey, it bodes well that they start. People in Calgary are already trotting out stats. I think historically in the National Hockey League, teams that start out 4-0, like you guys know, there's a stat for everything. Historically, any team that started 4-0, and there's something like 85 teams that have done it, I think 81% of them go on to make the playoffs. The last time the Flames, however, they've only gone 4-0 twice, and twice before this, and the last time they did was 15 years ago, and they missed the playoffs miserably, even though they went like 12-4-1. So things can slip and change. I do think the outlook on them has changed given just how well they've played and how resilient. 2 of their wins are massive come from behind wins. There's a lot to be optimistic about if you're the Calgary Flames, and even if they don't make the playoffs, I think there's so many positive signs around this team with youngsters like Sam Honzek and Pospisil and Zary. These are guys that this market just absolutely craves and loves and can't get enough of, and all 3 of them have been great so far.
Go ahead. I was going to say, when we're talking about the success of the Flames, last week, Dave and we talked to a couple of guys in Edmonton, that were like Oiler fans, they're Oiler appreciators, and I said, after seeing Connor McDavid cry on TV in the dressing room when the tears are flowing down his face, and I'm not a huge Oiler guy, I'm not a huge McDavid guy. I kind of like him even more because he's not a robot. I'm kind of buying into the Oiler hype, Eric. So how do they only have 1 win? It was guaranteed they're automatically going back to the Stanley Cup final in the middle of July. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, what could possibly be going wrong in Edmonton?
So I think, first of all, I saw this with the Stamps for so many years where they were the best team in football. I feel like I'm poking the bear here right now, but back in the day when I covered them 20 years ago, the Doug Flutie, Jeff Garcia era, it seemed like they were always the best team in the league, and then they get to the final and choke every time, or most of the times. And then the next year, it's just so hard because all you want to do is get back to that final game. All the rest seems like a waste of time and kind of a pain. I feel like that's the same way with the Oilers. Look, all these guys want to do is get back to that final and get over that hump. I still think they're going to be there, and I still think that that's part of the problem right now. But listen, I was up in Edmonton Game 3, and they're 0-2 at the time, and, like, guys are moping around. Like, even the media, they're moping around. I'm like, guys, last year you went a month and a half hardly winning hockey games, and you still made it to the final. I know you don't want to make a habit of this, but relax. Like, it's going to be fine. Now, there is a theory that the team has lost a ton of speed, and I agree with that. Look, they had a Jeff Skinner, who's one of the fastest guys in the league, but he's getting up there in age. But you lose Holloway, you lose Fogle. These are some of the speediest guys they've had in their lineup. And Ryan McLeod, another speedy guy. It's not the quickest team in the league anymore, but it's still one of the most skilled and deeper teams in the league, too. So I think the Oilers are going to be fine. As a matter of fact, I was thinking today, I got to look up how much better the odds are for them to win the cup or get to the final, because I'm going to get a piece of that action.
Well, okay, speaking of numbers, if my numbers are correct, if you went ahead and added the number of goals that have been disallowed for the Edmonton Oilers this year into their goals for column, they'd be the top offensive team in the National Hockey League. Do you know what's challengeable and what isn't, and what even the standard is in the NHL anymore?
No. The one thing I do know about the challenge and the standard is if your name's Corey Perry, you're probably not going to get the benefit of the doubt. That's the one thing. That's the one thing we learned. And you know what? Good on the league. That's well earned. That's well deserved. You know what? That goal against Calgary, and it really should have put the Oilers up 2-0, and that game was probably over from then. But that's one of them. That might be the wackiest call I've seen in terms of goaltender interference. Like, I asked Dan Vladar after the game about it, and he shrugged and he goes, "Eric, I thought it was a good goal." When the goalie, who was allegedly interfered with, thinks it was a good goal, damn it, it's a good goal. But, it's Corey Perry standing in front of him. I give the video guy in Calgary a million, all the credit in the world for seeing whatever he saw and thinking that would actually be a challenge that could be won. Because if he's wrong, they're down 2-0, and they're facing the best power play maybe in the history of the game. That game is definitely over. But he was right, and I really do think it has so much to do with Corey Perry. Like, Vladar said that his blocker did kind of get stuck in Perry's jersey for a split second. But, again, when he didn't even really feel it, I'm like, come on. I don't like the call. Yeah, it benefited Calgary, and it made for a hell of a story. But, come on. I mean, it's still hockey. It's still a contact sport. But the rule, guys, basically is if you're going to go in the paint, and you're allowed to go in the goalie crease, but just be ready, because if anything goes sideways, a goal's not going to count. So you can still go in the paint. It's not like the Brett Hull, that year when they made it, you couldn't even go in the blue. Now you can, but if your name's Corey Perry, you can't.
See, that was my question, though. Hasn't the NHL regressed? Like, we want to get goal scoring here. Why are we going ticky-tacky on this stuff?
Agreed. I agree.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. But, again, I got to call the league and talk to them a little bit about it. Sometimes then they go into the season, they read the riot act, or they take every year when they go into the year, the league or their officials talk to every team about, hey guys, this year we're going to crack down on high sticks. We really think there's a little bit too much high sticking or whatever. Every year there's a different one. I'm wondering if that's one of them this year. I got to check into it. I'll have an answer for you guys next week when we talk again.
All right, you've always said, this is Inside the NHL with Eric Francis from Sportsnet. It's brought to you by Saudi Mainline Chrysler. Worth the drive, every time guaranteed. You've always liked the Dallas Stars. Great mix of youth, veterans. They're off to a good start, but also in that Western Conference, a couple of teams surprising. The Avs and the Predators, no wins yet, and the Predators loaded up, not only with Jonathan Marchessault, but also with Steven Stamkos. What's going on in Nashville? Because that doesn't seem like a very, I know it's early, but that just doesn't seem like a very Barry Trotz-like team to not have won a game yet.
Yeah. Again, I don't worry about them either. I think there is a adjustment period when you've got, Stamkos wasn't just going to come in right away and start scoring right. I guess he could have, but it is a bit of an older team when you look at the core of that team being, Ryan O'Reilly and Steven Stamkos, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I'm not worried about it. It's early, like I said, and everybody knows that they're full of talent. Got a great goalie. I still think that they're a defense factory. They develop defensemen better than anyone in the league. They still have a great blue line. So, again, I don't worry about it. A 3 or 4 game is not much of a sample size, but it gives us something to talk about. But I'm not worried about Nashville. But you want to go back to Dallas. Great start. Ottinger's on fire. He's my pick to win the Vezina this year. And the reason why I love Dallas so much is because they've got this incredible young depth. They lost Joe Pavelski in the offseason, and they easily replaced him, in terms of minutes and role with Wyatt Johnston, who's one of my favorite up-and-coming players in the league. But also Logan Stankoven's had an incredible start to the season so far. And Maverick Bourque hasn't even gotten started yet, and he led the American Hockey League last year in points. So they do have a great core. We know that with guys like Sagan and Robertson and Hintz and guys like that. But the young guys coming up are really pushing those old guys. And I just think they got that perfect blend of youth and veterans.
Being in the West as we all are, I'd like to. We don't follow the East perhaps maybe as closely as we can, would, or should. But last night, Sidney Crosby gets to 1,600 points. You get 600 goals from Malkin in the same. Is Malkin undervalued by some of us that don't get a chance to see him regularly?
Oh my God, yeah, for sure. So he gets 500 goals last night. That's the second Russian ever to do it. And hey, there's politics involved with praising Russians and all that right now, given what's going on in the world. But to your point, last night I just saw the ticker. Crosby reaches 1,600 points. And I'm like, no mention. On the ticker they didn't add. Oh, and Malkin gets 500 goals. To me, 500 goals is just as worthy as 1,600 points. They're both incredible. Don't get me wrong, but again, he's always been overshadowed by Crosby. And what's amazing to me is I think a lot of people think over the years that Malkin and Crosby play together, and sure, on the power play they do, but generally speaking, they like to split those guys up. So it's not like Malkin is just a beneficiary of Sidney Crosby or vice versa. These guys have carved their own way without one another for the most part, and I just can't say enough about Malkin, because not only is he an incredible talent and offensive mind and all that, but he's a monster of a man too. And when he wants to throw his weight around, and he doesn't do it a lot, but when he does, when a game is getting pretty ragged, he's in there mucking up in the corner, and he's one of the best and one of the most formidable guys would ever go up against. So I was happy for him last night. I think that's just an incredible milestone for a guy who's played second fiddle in a market his whole career.
All right, so the Philadelphia Flyers are doing their West Coast swing to start off the season. Speaking of Russians, Matvei Michkov, what initial thoughts? He got drafted, played in the K last year. Now he made his way over. He scored a beautiful goal the other night. Is he the real deal so far in your mind? Yeah. I mean, he's exciting, right? Of all the rookies in the league this year, he's right up there amongst the ones that you really kind of want to see. And when they were in Calgary on Saturday night, I was really excited to see him. But I didn't. Invisible the whole night. I think at first that he's going to be mostly a power play specialist. I mean, that's where he's going to get most of his touches and be the most effective. But in terms of assimilating into the NHL, I think it's going to take some time. The two goals he got against Edmonton the other night, I noticed, were both on the power play, to my point. But again, it's early. I'm not trying to be critical. All I'm saying is I was excited to see him. He's not quite ready to be that guy who can dominate a game. Listen, 2 nights later, we had Connor Bedard come in here against the Calgary Flames. He had 7 shots on goal, and he was just an absolute beauty to watch. Not quite the same. I don't want to compare Michkov to Bedard, but, you come to see a guy, you're hoping to see something. I didn't see anything from Michkov, but when I watched that Oilers game, parts of that one, I thought, okay, there it is. We're going to start to see more and more of that as he kind of gets more comfortable in the league.
Well, that was the question I wanted to ask you a little bit about, was Connor Bedard, because I went to Coffee Row here, and it was pretty cool because there were a number of guys, there was 4 of them, as a matter of fact, that I had the opportunity to meet this week that were heading out west to go see Connor Bedard because they wanted to see his stops in Calgary and Edmonton. Is he better than last year, come as advertised? What was your takeaway from him?
Oh, he was fantastic, and I'd watched a couple nights earlier. Where was he? In Vancouver. He got 3 or 4 points. I mean, there really is a feeling when I watch him that he's still doing it alone. And I had a real interesting talk with the captain, Foligno, while they were in town the other day, and he was saying, I think one of the things that Bedard's got to learn, or is learning, is he doesn't have to do it all himself. The Chicago Blackhawks this year went from being one of the youngest teams in the league to, over the course of the summer, are now, I think, the second oldest team in the National Hockey League. It's amazing because they just went out and got a ton of veterans to surround Bedard with. And Taylor Hall's kind of the guy who they want to kind of help shape Bedard, a former Hart Trophy winner, first overall. He can help them in so many different ways, including on the ice. And, Bedard's getting more and more of a support staff around him. and he's moving the puck a ton. And I think that's going to help him this year. Obviously, going to get more points than he did last year because he was injured last year for a good chunk. But I saw an even better Connor Bedard when he was in Calgary. So 7 shots on goal tells you he was around it all night long. And he didn't get any points or any goals that night, but he sure looked good doing everything that he was doing, and he was doing it with his teammates in mind. So that's kind of that's neat to see that he's getting the support he needs.
It's Inside the NHL with Eric Francis here on the all-new SportsCage. Eric, one of the things I've always liked about you is you were one of the few in the media that wasn't afraid of Daryl Sutter in an interview or a post-game scrum. Now, Daryl's gone, and there's not many guys left that are kind of have a coach aura. Paul Maurice kind of has it in a fun way. But how was Torts the other day? Because I noticed there's certain dudes in the media, they play tough guy, and you know, but a guy like Torts comes along and they shrivel. How's Torts these days? Is he taking it easy on you guys? Is he still dishing it as good as he always has? Where is he? Is he in midseason form yet? I know we're only a few games in.
No, he's got the best is yet to come for him this year. For sure. It's early. He's just warming up. He's got his warm-up jacket on that he wears behind the bench. He's starting to feel it. He was tame, and it's early in the year, and there are no hot button issues right now surrounding his team. The pressure's not on. The critics aren't piling on. Last year was interesting when he started to really those sound bites that we all kind of cherish. They started really coming out last year when they were getting near the playoffs, and eventually faded away as down the stretch. And it was a tame. Both his availabilities here were just run of the mill. I know what you're talking about. I agree. A lot of young guys in the media today, and it is a young man's game. They're kind of scared to ask questions. But right now, what are you going to do? How are you going to poke that bear? What hot button topic are you going to ask him right now about the Philadelphia Flyers 3 games into the season? Trust me, I'll pick my spots, but there was just nothing there. He was very relaxed and quite cordial, actually.
Okay, so I ask you to draw upon your experience for this. When it comes to John Tortorella, is it an act? Is he putting on a show? Is it genuine? Because it seems like it's night and day, and I want to point to the fact that he was the first guy that invited Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau's father out to their practice, to be on the ice, to help him in healing. And that isn't what the persona would seem would be the norm for him, if you know what I mean, and what he tries to portray in the media.
I think, people who know him well talk often about how big a heart he's got. And, he's an emotional guy, and that's where you get these little outbursts. Because, generally speaking, all of them, if you were to line up all his greatest hits, his last 20, sound bites, they're all born out of somebody just, maybe asking too many negative questions or pushing him a little too far in terms of the negative side of the game, and him just defending his players and defending his organization, defending himself. That's the emotion of a John Tortorella. It is natural. It's not an act. And I think he does a pretty good job, to be honest, of containing his emotions for the most part. But because we know that underneath the surface, fury could bubble up at any given time, everybody watches with bated breath everything he says, because we're all thinking that at any point in time, he could kind of snap on somebody. So, no, there are other stories. He's got a real soft spot for people in the military and people who've served his country and all that. He's done all these wonderful things over the years. I think his son served in the military too, and so there's a long history there of a guy who is a pretty genuine, decent guy behind that facade that people see when he's in front of talking to Brooksy and screaming at him in New York.
I know, that's the best. All right, speaking of being decent dudes, a lot of people, if you've ever been to Calgary, whether it was for a leisure trip or you went to Stampede, you probably end up at a bar called Cowboys. It's world famous. And today, Eric, it's a big day. Eric does this thing called the Pizza Pig Out. And what year is this for Pizza Pig Out?
Just means I'm old. I've been doing this, 22 years. This is the 22nd annual Pizza Pig Out. And I'm actually standing at Cowboys right now. And you're right. Okay. I guarantee a bunch of listeners know about it.
So this is every pizza place in town brings pizzas to Cowboys. People come down, they judge the people, but you raise money for kids sport. Like over these past 21 years, like what's a number, because you spearheaded this 2 decades ago, like what kind of numbers are we talking that you've donated to kids sport to help kids in Calgary have a chance to do something that they maybe wouldn't have?
Yeah, and I'm fiercely proud of Kids Sport Calgary, and there's chapters all over our country. And, Jumpstart is another one. It's like it just gives kids who otherwise wouldn't get a chance to play sports and be active and learn all the wonderful lessons that sports teaches us all, especially in our youth, and how to win, how to lose, how to make friends, how to deal with adversity, physical fitness. Like I could go on and on. I don't need to tell you guys. I mean, we're all sports nuts, and we all understand the virtues of sport. And it crushes me that a city, especially as wealthy as Calgary, has lots of kids who have barriers in the way. So, yeah, that's why I've been doing this for all these years for kids sport. And, yeah, we've raised about I think we're going to go over $1.3 million this year.
Wow.
At a silly little pizza party, in a couple hours here, kind of a who's who of the Calgary sports scene is going to show up here. There are going to be 500 pizzas. There's going to be 700 people in the bar, and everyone just kind of meanders around the troughs trying the pizza and buying raffle tickets, and we got silent auction and live auction, and you know what? I just want to throw out there, like, anyone who wants to help support kids sport can do it even from Saskatchewan. If you go to ericfrancispizzapigout.com, I really think it's one of the best silent auctions in the game. And if you go to that website, just sign in there. You can see that we got, all kinds of Leafs, Flames, Blue Jays jerseys signed by all your favorite players and all sorts of different sports things. So anyway, I appreciate you asking me about it. I'm very passionate about it. I could talk about it for hours, but at the end of the day, gluttony for charity, I say. Gluttony for charity.
Well, you are on the Western Pizza guest hotline. And Dave, Western Pizza, what's your favorite pizza from Spiro and the gang there? It's a number 2, right?
The number 2.
Okay, so I have had a number 2. And Eric, I would say if we had a private jet, you may have to get one of your buddies with a private jet to fly us in there, that the Spiro Western Pizza number 2 at your Pizza Pig Out could be a walk-off champion. We could come in and just walk that thing off, get back on the bird, fly back to SASK, and with the title around our waists, and we'd be like, hey, listen, man, you brought it on yourself. So best of luck. I'm almost 51 years old. I don't know anybody that's eating dairy and gluten anymore. I would watch from afar and be jealous of everybody eating pizza. I mean, what doctor is recommending gluten and dairy in your 50s? Not anyone I'm going to. I mean, so whatever. You can't drink beer anymore because there's carbs. Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. No. We have gluten-free options. My daughter is gluten intolerant and lactose intolerant, and she's coming tonight. I guarantee one of these pizzerias is going to have a pizza that serves her just perfectly, and that's kind of the whole idea of the event. Just find a new pizzeria that you never knew existed and a new pizza, and start supporting them, because they're the real rock stars of this event. All these pizzerias donate up to 20 pizzas each, and they're the reasons we raised $1.3 million. So it's pretty cool. But you tell Western Pizza to bring the noise, and I'll make sure they get a nice prominent spot, and we can put them up against the world's best.
All right, will do. All right, this is Inside the NHL with Eric Francis. This is a Thursday edition because there's a lot going on this week. Normally, it's going to happen on Mondays and Wednesdays at 4 o'clock. Inside the NHL all season long is brought to you by Southie Mainline Chrysler. Worth the drive, every time guaranteed. This is the all-new SportsCage. We're going to take a break. Don't forget, we've got, speaking of special things on special days, tomorrow it'll be a Friday edition of Double Talk with Darian Durant just after 5 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts as we go into the second last weekend of the CFL season. And stick close. When we come back, Major League Baseball. It's the Division Series. You've got a couple of the villain teams in baseball that everybody loves to hate, but they're in the thick of that. We'll do that next on 620 CKRM.
Look what he's done with runners in scoring position back to early September. 16 out of his last 19. Typo numbers. There's a towering drive down the line. Ohtani's broken through. It is gone. A majestic home run into the second deck. 7-0 LA. Runners on base. Good things happen for Shohei Ohtani.
That thing went a long way. That went a long way, and that ball was close to hooking foul. I think it's so high. See how high that is and where that ends up?
Dodger fans have been waiting for him to do that.
It was an 8-0 blowout yesterday. The Dodgers take a 2-1 series lead over the New York Mets. Wow. It's so funny, Dave. These games, they're either like one-run nail-biters or just it's a blowout either way. I don't get it. Like, is the starting pitching from day in to day out that drastic on each team that nobody can, get any run support depending on who's on the mound?
I think so. I think it has a lot to do with the pitching, but you look at that game and Shohei Ohtani, this is how little the observers know. So Dave Roberts is the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he was being grilled about moving Shohei Ohtani down in the order because Ohtani was in the midst of a struggle. His struggle didn't mean that he wasn't hitting. He just wasn't hitting when there wasn't anybody on base. So that, I'll move him down in the order so that he can get on base and take some of the pressure off. I'm like, but the guy is hitting with runners on. That's what you want. And he did it again last night. So I'm like, you nail it 400 plus feet, you're doing something right. But yes, it is night and day, hot and cold, it seems, with these series this year. And that maybe is a byproduct of the pitching. Maybe it's hitters' adjustments. Again, you can put your finger on anything at this time of year.
Well, so we were talking about this on the show last week. A lot of people, because just they try and buy their way into it. The Yankees and the Dodgers are the two villains of Major League Baseball. Maybe you cheer for another team, but you probably also hate the Dodgers and the Yankees just because how they go about doing it. But you know what? Like last night, they backed it up. That was a beating. And the Mets, they are like a true, if you're going to write a movie script, they're a feel-good story. In June, they were, how many games were they out or below 500 and out of a playoff picture? Was it 11 or 12 games?
Yeah, they were terrible. They came to Toronto in the spring, and they were brutal. Like, the Jays made them look bad, and we all know how that ended.
Yeah. And then so the New York Yankees, Cleveland Guardians, it's game 3. First pitch got underway just after 3:00. No score. What are we in the second inning there?
Oh, Yankees the Yankees just scored. Yankees just
Nice.
scored. They were able to cash in. There was one out with 2 on second and third, and they get a single. So now 1 out, runners on first and third, top of the second. Yankees leading Cleveland 1-0 in Cleveland.
And the series is 2-0 for the Yankees. But here's the thing with both of those franchises, because they've had so much success in the years before, they spend so much money in the expectations. It's either win the World Series or everything is a failure. Like, talk about the pressure. Like last week, what was it? It was the 9-year anniversary of the Jose Bautista bat flip. And I'm like, yeah, you're proud to be a Blue Jay fan, to be like, that's almost a decade ago. That's how starved we are. But with those two franchises, and I'm trying to think, like, who else kind of has that kind of pressure? Yankees and Dodgers. It's a World Series or bust, or the season was a dud. Does anybody else have that kind of pressure in sports? That it's a complete disaster?
There's a lot. Premier Division soccer, absolutely there is.
Okay.
But most leagues now have got salary caps or salary management systems, right? So you can't go with the free spending that they do in the majors because it's a tax, right? So yeah, there's a salary management structure. It's a luxury tax, but the Yankees and the Dodgers, I don't even think they know what that number is. They just, send us the invoice end of the year and we'll pay that and we'll take care of it. But yeah, there's nothing like that, I don't think. But again, there's people that get upset about that. And let's face it, when the Toronto Blue Jays were winning World Series in the 90s, their payroll was out there. Like look at the lineup that they had, and like to bring in guys like Dave Winfield and Paul Molitor and the pitching staffs that they had to keep them together, right? Like, they paid a lot of money. Now, they made a lot of money, but they paid a lot of money. And there are some folks that, if you talk to them in the United States, that believe the Toronto Blue Jays are the bad guys when it comes to throwing money all over the place to win world championships.
I could only imagine, just in Ohtani and Judge merchandise alone in a year, the Yankees and Dodgers, like what just the one player sells, let alone the rest of the team. Because it's funny, every celebrity you see, if they're wearing a baseball hat, it's usually a Yankees or a Dodgers hat. There's a good chance, like one or the other. It's one of those two, and you may see something else, maybe the odd NBA thing, but it's Yankees or Dodgers, and it's all of that to be like it doesn't even matter. And this is interesting. And one of the things, and I also mentioned last week, now that we're into playoff baseball, because the regular season is way too long, I'm a fan again. It means a lot. And the pitch clock thing, how did we ever live without it? Because do you remember, especially in the playoff games, you'd get a pitcher, he'd be up there and he'd be working the ball, and he'd get in, then he'd step off. Yep. And then depending on who the batter was, to be savvy, to be like, they're in. No, you do that? Well, I'm going to back out. I'm going to step out of the box. And then there was the posturing and all that. And at times there would be like almost upwards of a minute go by between pitches, and you're like, you didn't notice it as much till now because of the pitch clock. Man, it sure keeps the game moving.
Now, I read a stat, and you know what, people are going to call me on this because I'm not 100% sure if it's 42 or 44, but there was a number that was out there that postseason games on average were 42 or 44 minutes longer than that of a regular season game pre-pitch clock. And so, of course, Major League Baseball wanted to go ahead and get their number down within 3 hours for a regular season game, but they also needed to do something for the post game, because keeping somebody engaged for 4 hours is tough at the best of times. And you're right, the pitch clock has done that, but yet, like, the difference pre-pitch clock of a regular season game to a postseason game, almost an hour. That's insane.
Well, if you're the execs at Major League Baseball, your wish is going to come true in a lot of ways. If the Yankees and the Dodgers are the teams that end up in the World Series, could you ask for more? The biggest TV markets, the most advertising dollars are going to be spent, the most eyes on it. But this is not only thing because of all the international players around the world and then what they'll make off that. Like nobody, although the Mets are a New York team, the Cleveland Guardians, New York Mets World Series just doesn't have the same cachet. And this is no different. And Gary Bettman's never going to come out and say it. They would never, ever want to have the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets, and it may not even happen because of alignment, in the Stanley Cup final, because it's just not good for business. Exactly. There's one game in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League tonight. The Battlefords are at Notre Dame. It's going to be a 7:30 face-off. And on the all-new SportsCage later on this afternoon, Jamie Neugebauer, who is the play-by-play guy for the Notre Dame Hounds, will join us. We'll do that after 5. We're going to take a break. If you want to be part of the show, you can always text us on the Capital Ford Lincoln text line, 306-936-6262. Capital Ford Lincoln, Saskatchewan's #1 Ford retailer, capitalfordlincoln.com. This is the all-new SportsCage on the home of local sports in Saskatchewan, 620 CKRM. Friday afternoons at 4:30, we do Friday Night Lights for Regina Motor Products. We do a check-in on Saskatchewan amateur football. As we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here and the regular seasons are coming to an end, the playoff seedings are stacking up. A bunch of games today. 6-man, you've got Assiniboia at Clavette, Ituna at Wynyard. You've got Lanigan at Southie. You've also got, let's see, in the South Rural League, you've got Moose Jaw Peacock at Balgony. That game's going to go 7 o'clock tonight at Leibel Field. And then there's some playoff action tomorrow in Regina. You've got O'Neill versus Campbell, 5:15 at Mosaic. And then you've got Winston Knoll versus Leboldus at Mosaic. Riffle and Miller get the bye. And then Sheldon Williams, F.W. Johnson are going to play at Leibel at 5:15, and then Balfour and Tom Friday at 7:30. Now, Dave, it's crunchy. It's win or go home. Like, this is it. If there's a trick play flea flicker, if there's a wide receiver screen somewhere in the playbook, it's time to pull it out because there is no tomorrow.
So you're saying that it's time to go ahead and pitch the ball to A.J. Ouellette and let him throw a pass into the end zone, or try an onside kick that flies 15 yards out of bounds to start the second half if you're the BC Lions. It's that time. Is that what it is?
So on that A.J. Ouellette pass, I don't know what football game I was watching last week at Mosaic Stadium. I completely missed that. And I was watching the game. I was like, what just happened? I'm looking around, and then I saw the replay and I'm like, I gotta focus here. Cause I was like, cause at first I thought I was seeing things cause I looked and I'm like, God, Trevor Harris looked awkward on that pass. And then I'm
Trevor Harris is rolling over right now. What?
That wasn't Trevor Harris. That wasn't Trevor Harris throwing that pass.
No, it was
Hey,
not.
Mark Mueller. Hey, Mueller, you faked everybody out. And people sitting in the press box. It's so funny. So at Mosaic Stadium, so we have our press box where there's John, the stat guy, Dave in the middle, and then Luke over here. And then we're elevated. We get to sit behind. And right next door is the rider coach's box. And sometimes when they come in, you know this, if you make eye contact, you kind of give her one of those, a heads up or, like winks and guns, like have a good game.
Yeah.
He got everybody on that play. I don't think I was the only one that didn't realize that wasn't number 7 back there throwing the ball. That was AJ Ouellette who was throwing her into the end zone.
What I want to know is I haven't been able to find the film on it. I think that his pass was deflected. That's why it was so bad.
Yeah.
So AJ, I'm standing up for you. I think that was a deflected pass. I don't think it was as bad as it looked. Colson?
I think it was Matthew Betts who was coming up on it, right?
Hey?
Yeah, I think he got a finger on it.
Okay.
I was listening to another podcast this week, and Pat McAfee mentioned while he was with the Colts, he came up to coach once and was like, "Hey, I got a great idea for this trick punt." And the coach was like, "So you're telling me we're going to take Peyton Manning off the field, I'm going to put you on, and you're going to try and throw the ball?" And I'm like, you know what? Valid point. So I thought of trick plays a little differently since I heard that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be. So you've got the guy with the best CFL completion percentage since he's come back from injury. He's thrown 20 touchdowns. I'd be like, all right, okay, I like it. Okay, I'm listening. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Come on now. If that ball isn't touched on the way, though,
I know
it's a beautiful pass. Great call.
I know that's why we're getting. If it's in the playbook, guys, then get it out there.
Then use it.
CFL, this game tomorrow, and we're going to talk to RJ Broadhead tomorrow. He's the play-by-play guy for the Hamilton Ticats. Dave, you've been a play-by-play guy before, and you've been through some awful seasons depending on the team you're with. He probably should get some sort of medal for having to watch every Hamilton Ticat game. And tomorrow they're going to play the Calgary Stampeders. And I'm not saying that this should be a relegation game, but that may not be the best CFL game that's going to be played all year.
Well, I broadcast the Saskatoon Blades in their infamous 7-win season. So I'll say I've been through it before.
Wow.
But
That's awesome.
I'm really curious because there's actually a lot to play for, right? If you're Jake Mayer and you happen to get the football, which I don't know if he is going to or not, you're playing for a job, plain and simple. Dave Dickinson, again, can he get his troops fired up and rallied up for this game? We'll find out. And Hamilton hasn't been as bad as they could have been at times, but there's internal pressure there, right? They bring in Chris Jones as a defensive consultant, right? So he's running the defense, and they kind of turn things around a little bit defensively. But again, they went through the offseason of change where they promoted Milanovic to the head coach role. Orlando Steinauer has kind of got ahead and divested himself of all the football operations, saying, "You guys do it."
Hey, my problem. Yeah, no. Yeah. Hey, man, not on my watch. Hey, man. Hey. That's all. That sounds like a you problem. That ain't a me problem over here.
So yeah. So how do they handle that? Because again, you got Milanovic, you got Jones. They're big personalities. Maybe they can play nice together. They've worked together in the past in Toronto before. So there's a lot to be sorted out in this one.
And the best part of all of this, no matter how the game plays out, Bo Levi Mitchell's still going to have that same cool as a cucumber look on his face, like, I don't care.
I wonder if he wears the Boveralls again. You know, the Boveralls were a thing.
There's not that many trends that develop in the CFL. Boveralls is a good one. I'd go with it. Ottawa's a Toronto. To me, Ottawa, they're like a cheap card table. They folded a long time ago. Toronto wins that game. They're going to get a home playoff game. And then the Lions at Montreal. And with Vernon Adams Jr., I don't know why they didn't start him last week. If you're a VA, you've been a good soldier all year. They're going to be in Montreal. We don't know if Fajardo's going to play. Like, is this going to be like an exhibition game? Or are we playing for tune-up? But I don't think BC will look as listless as they did against the Riders. I just don't think they'll do it 2 weeks in a row.
I would love to be inside that stadium because
Yep.
BC, you're darned if you do or you're darned if you don't, right? If Vernon comes out and he soils the sheets, well, you know what? It's Nathan Rourke's team. We're fine going into the playoffs. If he comes out and he's spectacular, oh, well, Montreal didn't play anybody. They ran a base defense all game. So he can't do anything right. And if I'm Montreal, I'm only running base all day. I'm like, go ahead. You guys do you. We got this figured out. We'll play in a couple of weeks in the East Final.
One of the big headlines yesterday, Tom Brady became a minority owner of the LA Raiders. And our guy, Arash Madani, we're going to go coast to coast in just a couple of minutes after 4 o'clock and get his thoughts on the GOAT becoming an owner and how this affects his NFL Fox job. Stick close. It's the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. It's a bye week for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The 13th fan game will go down on Saturday, September 26th to wrap up the regular season at Mosaic Stadium. Because it's close to Halloween, Dave, you can dress in Halloween costume and come to the game. You could go masquerading as a Bomber fan. You could do whatever you'd like. Maybe you win a prize from some of the Rider staff. It's all good. There's huge implications. It's Maz and voice of the Riders, Dave Thomas, filling in for Barney on the Sports Cage today. We should note Jeremy O'Day will be on the Coaches Show Monday afternoon, just after 4:30. All right, it's time to go coast to coast with Arash Madani.
The all-new Sports Cage and Coast to Coast with Arash Madani is brought to you by Smart Investing Solutions. Be smart with your money. Call Brian Golly at Smart Investing Solutions, 546-2533.
All right, Arash, there's no shortage of things to talk about, but let's start with the internet staying undefeated after the announcement yesterday that Tom Brady is now a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. The picture that's going around, and we have it on the Sports Cage socials, is Tom Brady with the Mark Davis haircut. How is that not the best?
Oh, boy. You know what's amazing about that, fellas? Fox is paying this guy over $300 million to be their lead analyst, and part of the perks of being an analyst means you get to go to practice and you get to get in on production meetings and all those things. Brady can't do any of that as an owner. He can't criticize officials as an owner. What kind of analyst is Tom Brady? Like, here's somebody who's just learning the ropes of this thing, and he can't even, get all the things that are going to help him be great.
Tom Brady is playing chess. People haven't even pulled out the checkerboard. This is a brilliant move. Be like, I don't have to go to practice. I don't have to go early for production meetings. I just basically get to show up on Sunday, talk about that game, and then I'm done. Arash, it's the best job in broadcasting. Nothing better.
I am more nervous than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs right now, because when I got hired, I didn't disclose that I had purchased Riders shares in the last round. Should I have made that declaration? Am I in trouble?
Dave, I don't think it makes a difference in that league.
Whoa! Wow!
I mean, it's the wild
That's a 2-chair body rock back shot by Arash. Wow!
Wait a minute! You got golf carts and medical carts going right through the opponent's sideline, taking out players. I mean,
no, that was a fire truck. It wasn't a medical cart. It was a fire truck.
Fire truck. There we go. Okay.
All right, Arash, here. Since we started with the GOAT and the NFL, couple of things. If I'm British, I'm not happy for a lot of reasons, but every year we get tortured with the Khan family, but the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to wrap up their time in London playing the New England Patriots in what could be one of the worst football games of the year this weekend. Those poor people paying all that money to see some of the worst football anywhere on the planet.
Yeah. The thing about Jacksonville, when let me start with New England. When the Pats won week 1 over Cincinnati, my takeaway was, man, New England might go 1-16. And they're kind of on that trajectory right now. But Jacksonville, watching that game last Sunday morning, guys, they look like a team that didn't go to training camp and hadn't practiced yet. I am appalled at just how lost and scattered they are. You know, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and all that draft capital in their front seven, and they're just a mess. And like, it almost felt, I don't know how you guys saw it. It almost felt like Caleb Williams was looking around at one point. He's like, is that really all that green grass? Like, he was almost hesitant because it felt like as a rookie, he's like, am I being baited into something that really isn't there? No, Caleb, it's there. They're just dreadful. I don't know what happens next with Jacksonville, but there's more and more talk about the NFL exploring international options of having a franchise somewhere. And if there is a team that moves in the NFL, my prediction is Jacksonville is in the leadoff position to do it. And I'm not sure if it's going to be with the Khan family or not, but that franchise just seems hopeless.
If the NFL goes international, then what's your prediction? Don't say Toronto. We all know it's not happening in Toronto, but
yeah.
Is London choice one, or is Mexico?
Dave, honestly, I think what they'd like to have, and this is very pie in the sky down the road, is I think they'd like to have a European division.
Okay.
Like, they've played in Munich, they've played in Frankfurt, they've played all over England at Wembley, now at Tottenham. Next year, they're going to play in Madrid. I think the NFL's like, if they, what are they at, 32 teams, if they ever get to like 40 teams of, 8 divisions of 5 teams, something like that, I think that's what they want to do. Look, the fact that they went down to Brazil, the fact that they continue to knock on the door of Mexico, I think they want to be as global as they can. I think the place that has the least traction is Canada, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. 32 teams. There's arguably 16 to 20 good quarterbacks in the league, which leaves a lot of holes. Tonight, the Thursday nighter, Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints. So with Derek Carr's injury, is Jameis Winston still the backup there? Is he going to be starting? And you got Bo Nix, who's coming in as a raw rookie, who's, just learning his way. Like, what do you even make or take from this game tonight? Do you go with Saints even just for the simple fact that they're just not as rookie laden as the Broncos at quarterback?
Well, no, they are going rookie. Spencer Rattler, their 3rd round pick out of South Carolina, he's going to be the starter. Jameis is now in the dumpster fire that is Cleveland. He's Deshaun Watson's backup over there with the Browns.
Right. Sorry, Jameis Winston fans. No disrespect. I thought you were still because he was hiding nicely on the roster in New Orleans for a couple of years, making some decent money.
He sure was.
And playing a little while, but I think when Derek Carr got hurt, any chance the New Orleans Saints had of maybe even a wild card this year went out the window, because I just don't think. And I like Spencer Rattler. I remember watching him on that Netflix show a million years ago about the high school quarterbacks and watching him progress through college. But he had a decent game last week. But then when it came time, Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers turned up the pressure on him, and when they started blitzing, that's when it seemed like the lights went out for him, and it just looked like he was a kid playing a college game, and there were pros on the other side on defense.
You know what's amazing, guys, is how knee-jerk and how quick we try and make sense of things after a week or two. Like, let's go back at the end of week 2, right? We're taking the 10,000-foot view. The next great team in the NFL is the New Orleans Saints. Here they are putting up 40 points in back-to-back games. Derek Carr is just lighting up the NFL. And man, the Baltimore Ravens are in trouble. They are 0-2. They just gave up a 10-point lead at home in the 4th quarter to the Las Vegas Raiders. Lamar Jackson is washed. This team is in trouble. They lost their entire defensive staff. Are the Ravens even going to make the playoffs? Well, now the Saints are a complete dumpster fire. They can't get out of their own way. They just gave up 50 to Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, and the Ravens haven't lost since. So here we are through 6 weeks, and we're trying to figure out who's great and who's not. I look at it right now, and I'm saying to myself, I get that Kansas City's 5-0, but Baltimore may actually be the best team in the AFC. And I look at the NFC and I'm like, yeah, my beloved Vikes are 5-0, but I still think Detroit's the best team, even with the Aiden Hutchinson injury. And then I look at my clock and I'm like, right, it's October 17th, and none of this matters right now, because all you got to do is be 2 or 3 games above 500 at the end of November, be healthy, and that's when the season really starts.
All right, we were talking about the GOAT in Tom Brady, but you've got a bit of a take when it comes to an underrated player that may be playing right now. Is it a hockey player that you wanted to talk about, Arash?
Yeah, like there was a major milestone that happened in sports last night, guys, that I think even 10 years ago, definitely a generation or two ago, would have been like, there would have been a countdown. It would have been a huge story. Evgeny Malkin scored his 500th goal last night. And I get that he's Robin to Batman in Pittsburgh, but like, that is an incredible, like, Alexander Ovechkin today said, I texted him, I said, welcome to the club. Like, he's in rarefied air. And the guy who set up the goal had his 1,600th point last night, and Sidney Crosby's like the 5th fastest to 1,600, and Wayne and Mario are among the 2 that are ahead of him. Like, it's amazing what they've done down there in Pittsburgh, because not only have they won 3 cups, and not only have they been like in the conversation for a while, but they just do it so damn quietly that here you have maybe the best 1-2 punch in all of hockey, especially now that Stamkos is in Nashville. He's not with Edmonton. And it's just like they are so under the radar that, 500 goals and 1,600 points comes and goes, and it's barely even on our radar.
Arash, you missed the memo. The Canadian media was focused last night, and I talk about laser focused. Austin Matthews scored his first goal as a Toronto Maple Leaf captain. That's what needed to dominate the headlines in a meaningless game and a win against LA. So, like, can you either get on board or just get off the boat altogether? Come on now. That Austin Matthews goal is going to mean way more. Oh, wait. Actually, it doesn't mean a thing. And I agree with you. Look at guys like, when somebody gets presented the silver stick for 1,000 games and you start going, okay, 82 games if you're lucky every year, God, that's a long time. And then you start thinking like 500 goals. Look how many players in the league will never get to 50, and then 1,600 points. And it's kind of like, that's the kind of stuff that should stop everything in its tracks and celebrate it. But they don't, because it's a smaller market. It's all of that. It's truly remarkable how
they're just Pittsburgh just likes to keep it low key, like even in their heyday, like it was the HBK line and they had a sandwich at Primanti Brothers for them. Like it's been all very, we got our own little clique here and this is the way we're going to go about it.
See, and that was going to be my question, because it's hard to fathom that we would overlook him that much. But even when you watch highlight packages from the NHL, very often you don't see what Malkin is doing, but you're sure going to see what Sidney Crosby is doing. And so is it a situation where he simply is in Sid's shadow that much that we don't take notice of what he's doing? Or is there maybe something in the back of our mind saying, if he wasn't playing with Sidney Crosby, even though they don't play together on the same line, would he be putting up the numbers that he does?
Yeah, I don't know. But it's funny, like if you asked any hockey fan, top like 20 players of the last 10 years, top 25 players of the last 10 years, and they just started thinking and naming some off, I bet you out of 100 hockey fans, maybe 2 or 3 would put Malkin on that list. And I bet you of the 100, most would be shocked that he has 500 goals.
When I heard that, I was like, wow, the quietest 500 goals, ever. This is Coast to Coast with Arash Madani. He's on the Western Pizza guest hotline. We got a million things going on. We were talking earlier with Eric Francis. The Flames are 4-0. They're the Billy Bean Moneyball story of the season so far. The Oilers only have 1 win. And what was the stat? Let me just go back here. And is there reason to panic? Because the Preds, the Avs, the Canucks, and the Sharks still don't have any wins at all. I know we're only 2 weeks into the season, but I would have thought the Predators, not only with Stamkos, but with Jonathan Marchessault, a solid lineup, good goalie, and then you look at the Avs, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, all of that. Is the competition just that good in the Western Conference that they haven't been able to hit stride?
And the Avalanches have had no goaltending either, which has been a little bit of a problem for them. Look, the Sharks may not win a game all year. I mean, I say that tongue in cheek.
I know. Well, and that's fine. Like
so
nobody expected that. But like, if you were to say the Predators, the Avs, Canucks, it's kind of it's the sample size thing too. It's the baseball thing I always talk about. It's like, all right, if you start a baseball season like 2-8, everyone's up in arms. But if you go 2-8 in like the middle of July, nobody notices. I think if you go 4 games in middle of January that you haven't won and the NFL playoffs are going on and all the kind of everything just kind of meshes and jumbles into one. I don't know about the other teams. Just because I live around the corner from the Leafs practice facility, the Leafs had almost a month-long training camp. Like, I don't understand why the preseason is so long for these guys. I don't know if every team went that long. I know, like, Craig Berube's here. He's the new head coach. Maybe he wanted some extra time. But these dudes don't need that long. They don't need preseason games. So I don't know where every team is at to start the year, but the Colorado one is a little surprising. I think of all the teams that you mentioned there, Maz.
Do you have, in your analytical mind, is the date American Thanksgiving when you find out the true colors of an NHL team, so to speak? You find out what their identity is, who they are, what they might be. Is that kind of the date, that the sample size that you need to get an accurate read on a team?
Maybe even a little later, Dave, honestly. Yeah. Maybe even into the middle of December. Like for me, NFL is U.S. Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Because then at that point you have about 5 weeks left in your regular season, and you kind of know who's on IR. You kind of know where you're at. I also think it depends on your roster construction for an NHL team. Are you a bunch of vets? Do you have a bunch of kids? All that kind of stuff. So I think that all weighs into the conversation too. And then ultimately goaltending. Like, what do you have there? I think by U.S. Thanksgiving you find out whether or not your goaltender's legit. I'll tell you that much.
All right. We're chatting with Arash Madani here. We're going to get CFL, and then we're going to wrap on Major League Baseball and talk villains. CFL, you had said this weeks ago, and it looks like that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Ottawa Red Blacks are going to continue to crumble, and I think they're going to lose to the Toronto Argonauts this weekend. And then Toronto's going to get the home playoff game, and then they're going to play Ottawa, and they're going to lose again, speaking of the Red Blacks, and then it'll be Toronto and Montreal in the CFL final. Hey, Ottawa, it was a great start, but just an epic collapse down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you lose your left tackle and your right tackle and your entire linebacking core and a couple of receivers. That's no recipe for anything. Here's what's interesting, guys. The Argos are a 4.5-point favorite this week at home to Ottawa. 2 weeks from now, or whenever it is, when the East semifinal is going to be played in Toronto between the Argos and the Red Blacks, would you be surprised if that line is up to like 7.5 or 8 or even 8.5?
Not at all.
Same two teams, same stadium, same game. I think that Ottawa's record is the only thing that's kind of keeping that line close. Toronto is the far superior team. Toronto is coming. Like, the Argos, to me, after Hamilton, have been the hottest team of the last month, and Ticats just found themselves too far back to get back into the hunt. Obviously, the Riders are right there in the conversation too. So, yeah, I think Ottawa's in big trouble. Here's the one thing about the Red Blacks, like, if you're looking for any kind of silver lining, their defense starts with their defensive line. So what do you expect from the Argos? You'd expect screen game, play action, run the ball. Those can be areas where passes get deflected, on screens for picks or running the football. It could be turnovers. But I honestly think that the Argos stomped them on Saturday afternoon. I really do.
Arash, I give credit where credit is due because you came here, and again, you can go to the podcast at sportscage.com and you can see where you came out and clear as day said the Ottawa Red Blacks are not going to win another game this season before they were here to take on the Riders. And I thought, you are insane. This team is better than that. And yeah, I knew they were banged up at the time, but I still just wasn't buying what you were selling. But now it just doesn't seem like anything can go right. And do you think Drew Brown is the solution at quarterback for that franchise?
I don't know if he's the solution. I think he's the better option.
Okay.
I think he's the better option over Masoli. The Dustin Crum thing is, kind of played itself out. Could he be a number 2? Maybe, I guess. They've tried everything with Masoli. They so badly wanted it to work with Jeremiah. It's not. To me, Masoli's going to be a number 2 somewhere next year. Matt started the conversation today saying, there might be 15 good quarterbacks in the NFL. I take the under there. And so if there is not a position in sports where there is so much demand with so little quality supply. And so I think Ottawa, I don't want to say they're stuck with Drew Brown. I think they have to continue to ride Drew Brown because what else can they do? What's going to happen with McLeod Bethel Thompson? I don't know. What's going to happen with Vernon Adams this offseason? I don't know. What's going to happen with Montreal? Are they going to move one of those guys? Calgary's probably going to move on from Jake Mayer, you got to think. So I think Drew Brown's going to be the guy because he's going to have to be the guy.
Yeah, and it's funny, you mentioned all of the games in the CFL this weekend, the implications. It's funny, when Davis Alexander is running the Alouette offense, he kind of can move it up and down the field at times very efficiently. We've all kind of gotten used to Cody Fajardo, the dinking and the dunking and the spinoramas every once in a while, and sometimes making it look harder than it is. And legitimately, Jason Moss, what do you do as you're going down the stretch here? And that game in Hamilton tomorrow, and I know you're probably going to be going to see it in person between the Ticats and the Stamps, because why not? It's Friday Night Football, and who doesn't want to see that? You've got Bo Levi Mitchell, who the best part about Bo to me is his carefree attitude. Man, it doesn't matter. Whatever you guys decide to do, Bo is going to be A-okay, whether he's a Ticat next year or not. You have the mayor thing. You have Matthew Schiltz, who's going to be starting the game. You've got all of these questions in the air. So for a lot of people are saying it's kind of a nothing game, maybe in the standings, but if you're a fan of the CFL and positioning and players where they're going to end up, there may be some great audition tape out there tomorrow to be like, oh, okay. Because keep in mind, our quarterback here in Saskatchewan, who is lighting up the league, is a free agent come the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken, right? Trevor Harris's contract is up. Mm-hmm. So
so they're going to offer Trevor the most money in the league, or maybe number 2 behind Rourke, because they're going to have to. There's no other choice in the matter.
I know.
Harris is going to make probably somewhere between Chad Kelly and Nathan Rourke money, is my guess. And they can give it a lot of that to him up front so that from a tax implication standpoint, there's more money in his jeans and make his base salary less. Because that's what you have to do. There's no other option in this scenario, because if you are Edmonton with new ownership, wouldn't you back up the Brinks truck for Trevor Harris right now? If you are maybe Hamilton, I'm not sure what they think of Bo. I'm really not sure. I'm also really not sure who's calling the shots there. What do you do this offseason? So it's going to be interesting. I think the Davis Alexander thing, guys, is really interesting because all he's done is succeed there in Montreal. And I wonder, Jason Moss is not a vanilla play caller, not a vanilla game planner. I wonder if they're going to have certain packages and certain series for Alexander in an East Final to come in and run the offense to try and keep the defense off guard and off balance. I wonder if at some point early in the second quarter, it's a 10-7 ball game and out trots Davis Alexander on 2nd and 5. And the defense is going to be like, uh-oh, now what? because it's all tendencies. It's all whatever they're going to do. Why not? Why not mix it up a little bit? Especially, I know he won a Grey Cup last year. I don't know who the better quarterback is on that roster.
Okay, let's wrap on this. It's the division series in baseball. You've got the American League, you've got the National League. Dave and I were talking about this last hour. Baseball to me is so much better when the villains are playing a role in the final scene of the movie. The villains being we're going to buy our way into the World Series every year. We're going to try Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees. To me, I love it. It's the best part of baseball. You automatically have a bad guy. You've got a heel in this. So is villains good for business in your mind when it comes to major leagues and the playoffs?
I do. Big markets are good because it's such a regional sport. I just found it amazing the other night when Cleveland intentionally walked Liberatores to get to Aaron Judge. Like, what are you doing? And if that's an analytics thing, then just torch the entire office. Like, when everyone's gone home for the night, get some lighter fluid and set the place on fire. Because that's the stupidest thing you could possibly do, and to do it in the Bronx. Of all the, at Yankee Stadium, you're going to do that? And Judge just shrugs after and said, it's amazing, guys. The Yankees haven't been to a World Series since 2009, when they won it with Jeter and A-Rod and Teixeira and all those guys. CeCe Sabathia was their ace.
That's crazy. Because you think they've been in the World Series every couple of years, but it's been that long.
Yeah. Been that long. The Red Sox have won 2 in that span, if not 3 maybe in that span. So it's funny, if you think about the Yankees over the years, this is probably not even their best team of the last 5, and yet here they are with their best chance to get into the World Series with a 2-0 lead in the series. Sorry, I'm just watching the game while we're chatting here.
Just throwing this out there. And that analytics department in Cleveland, didn't they have some influence by, what was it, Shapiro and Atkins or something that had something to do in Cleveland in analytics? Oh, sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Mighty Guardians have done a lot better since those 2 guys left Cleveland. I'll tell you that.
Hey, Captain Obvious, stop pointing out the big things, the road signs, okay? The billboards along the highway, all right?
Sorry.
All right. He's Arash Madani. He joins us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We call it Coast to Coast for Brian Golly. Arash, we'll catch up with you next week when Barney is back. Always good. Can you imagine in the World Series if it came down to Aaron Judge, 2 outs, bases loaded, Yankees down by 3, and they bring in Shohei Ohtani to pitch, and then he strikes him out? Could you imagine? A better
and then he blows out his elbow again. There's a question for you. You got a $70 million a year investment.
Ooh.
And you say, okay, you can put him out there to win the World Series, but he won't be able to pitch for you again next year. Would you do it?
Go win the World Series because the mud, just everything. Yeah. You take the win now.
With you.
Take the win now.
If he was throwing a no-hitter, I go to the Ross Atkins school. If he's throwing a no-hitter through 8, I take him out of the ball game, hoping that my bullpen can hold him.
Dave, the Ross Atkins school would have pulled him in the 5th. He wouldn't have seen the 8th.
Yeah. What was I thinking?
Right.
All right. Hey, all right, we're going to take a break. There's a lot being said. A lot of it, you could be like, you guys are so far off base on everything you've talked about so far in the show. Let us know on the Capital Ford Lincoln text line, 306-936-6262. Capital Ford Lincoln, Saskatchewan's #1 Ford retailer, capitalfordlincoln.com. We're going to take a break. If you're watching the all-new Sports Cage on our stream on X or on YouTube, thank you. We like and subscribe. And you're also got it on the home of local sports in Saskatchewan, 620 CKRM. Hey, Dave, growing up as a kid, what kind of music was played in the house? Because at our house, and obviously it was AM radio. I mean, growing up, it was always country music. That's why I'm a country music fan today, because that's all mom and dad listened to was country music.
100% all the way country music, yeah.
So it's funny, this Saturday night at Casino Regina, Golden Ring, the story of George Jones and Tammy Wynette is on stage. I am this close to buying tickets and dragging my wife to it, who does not like country music at all. She would go out of, I think, but I'm like, and if you saw it last year, within the past year or two on Showtime, which was on Crave, they did the George and Tammy, the 6-episode show. I thought was incredible. Man, what a love story. Crazy. Yep. They're both crazy, both nuts, both hooked. Besides being incredibly talented, both of them, they just had that fiery, combustible personality, both of them, with their addictions and their problems, that they were the perfect match for a while, for as long as it lasted. But when it burned hot, it was outstanding. Some of the work.
What was it? So the Johnny Cash biopic. Who was that? Was that Reese Witherspoon and Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah, he didn't win the Oscar that year, and she did, and he should have. He was incredible in that. I can watch that movie too anytime. By the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably
Speaking
one of my
awards,
favorite.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, no, I was going to say, like, when it comes to George Jones songs, a lot of people are going to say, like, the ultimate country music song, the best of all time, is "He Stopped Loving Her Today" by George Jones. That's kind of up there in elite territory. But to me, and there's a whole story behind that, how it took months for him to record because it was so sad and singing. To me, the song where the emotion in his voice just gets me every time is "Grand Tour." To me, Grand Tour is
That's got number ones at one written all over it. Hello, Colin Love.
Colin Lovequist right now, if he's still at the radio station, he will come into the control room. He will physically toss Curtis and Colson out of the control room, get behind, and he'll go into our computer system, because there's no more CDs or records, and pull up those songs and play them for us. Okay, sorry. Speaking of awards, where are we going to go?
Well, speaking of awards, of course, Prairie Football Conference Championship game is up in Saskatoon on Sunday. Regina Thunder, the Saskatoon Hilltops get set to go. The PFC actually released their award winners, and all but one of the individual awards went to those two franchises, as you can well imagine. Coach of the Year was Tom Sargent of the Hilltops. Outstanding offensive lineman, Cody Szymanski of the Hilltops. He's a great story. He actually played some university ball and then came back to finish out his career with the Hilltops. Sadiq from Regina Thunder, outstanding running back. That one, there would have been Rylan Likert had a heck of a year for the Thunder, but Sadiq gets the nod on that one. An average of 7.4 yards per carry. That's something else. Drake Douglas from the Hill.
Yep.
Yeah, he did well. Drake Douglas from the Hilltops is the top receiver. Outstanding quarterback was Trey Reeder of the Hilltops. Liam Selwood of the Thunder was the outstanding defensive lineman. No surprise here. The outstanding linebacker, Stephen Smith. Of course, we've had him on our show a number of times. The Regina Thunder player that is actually practicing with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Keon Raymond, not the CFL guy, the outstanding defensive back from Calgary, though. The outstanding special teams player was Drake Douglas, returning 38 kicks for 342 yards for the Hilltops. The outstanding rookie of the year, Tristan Rapchuk from the Thunder. Jaden Gale of the Calgary Colts was the defensive rookie of the year. So sorry, there was two non-Hilltop or Thunder players. The outstanding defensive player of the year was Stephen Smith of the Regina Thunder. Again, he is spectacular and is a very, very talented young man. The outstanding offensive player of the year, Trey Reeder of the Hilltops. And then the most valuable player was also Trey Reeder of the Hilltops. 64% completion percentage for the young man, over 1,600 yards in 8 games. So congratulations to all the award winners.
I think a lot of us that pay attention to junior football know that whoever probably wins this football game has a chance to win the CJFL, because they usually are the two best teams. How do the Thunder win on Sunday? They've lost twice this year. Where are the deficiencies or the weaknesses in the Hilltops game for Regina to have a chance?
In my humble opinion, the biggest obstacle that the Thunder have to overcome is themselves. Because even talking with Coach Scott McCauley in the preseason, he was already lining his team up to play the 2 games that they had in the regular season against the Hilltops. And the Hilltops have had some success. And sometimes that mindset, if something bad happens, you fumble a ball, you throw an interception, you give up a sack, something bad is going to happen in every football game. It's how you respond. And the Regina Thunder, I think, have proven that they've got the talent and the capabilities to play with anybody, whether it's the Hilltops or anyone. And I think that if they can get over that hurdle of, okay, we're playing at Saskatoon Minor Football Field. It's a hard facility to play in. We get that. If you can get over that hurdle, if you can make something good happen early and then continue that momentum, then you can get over that hurdle. Last week, the Saskatoon Hilltops had a tough time against the Edmonton Huskies. The Hilltops didn't play that great from what I've seen on film. So to me, if I'm the Thunder, I'm going in there. I want to get a quick strike early, and then I just need to have the belief that we can go ahead and get the job done. Because once you've got that bit of a mental edge, which right now I think falls to the Saskatoon Hilltops, that is a huge obstacle to overcome.
All right, interesting take. So it's more mental. They've got all the physical attributes. They've got the player. Like, it's funny, you were running through those individual award winners. There's no shortages of talent on either side. It's just that if something happens, we can survive it and we can overcome it. It's funny that the 2 days this weekend, it's kind of like a mirror thing. So on Sunday, you have the Thunder at the Hilltops, 1 o'clock at SMF Field in Saskatoon. Saturday, the Rams are off their bye week. They're in Saskatoon to take on the U of S Huskies. It's a game that we're going to have on 620 CKRM. What do the Rams got to do? Because now it's funny. The Huskies stumbled out of the gate. What did they lose their first couple games? Now it looks like they are rolling. What does this young Rams team have to do to kind of, or is it the exact same thing? We can do it. We just have to not do it to ourselves.
There's a bit of that. I would suggest also Owen Sieben was on track to return. Of course, he missed most of the season. He went out in week number 1 for the Rams in that victory in Calgary. So the Rams are hopeful that he'll come back. And this isn't a knock on Noah Pelche, but this is the guy that you kind of rode out of training camp with into the season, and we're hoping for good things. So he's missed a big chunk of time, but he's now had time to fully recover, see what's going on with the offense. So I think he injects a little bit of life there. And then defensively for the Rams, I know that they're beaten up, and that's tough because everybody gets beaten up at this time of year. And for the Rams, there's some key guys that are banged up. But saying that, the Saskatchewan Huskies have had a penchant for turning the football over. So if I'm the Rams, right, I'm going and taking a page right out of Corey Mace's book. And, of course, Corey Mace, the head coach of the Rough Riders, has gone in and met with the Rams a number of times. And he said, run to the ball. And, again, don't feel bad. Be greedy about wanting the football on defense. And if the Huskies turn the ball over, the Rams are going to be right there to pounce on it. And that's going to be the key. Who turns over the ball least and makes the fewer mistakes? Yes, thanks for the cliche, Dave. But it's really true when you look at the numbers for both of these teams.
So Saturday at 12:45 right here on 620 CKRM, we'll have the pregame show with Brendan McGuire and Derek Bidwell. 1 o'clock is kickoff between the Rams and the Huskies. It's funny that you mentioned turnovers because remember at the football game on Saturday, before the ceremony at halftime, Darian Durant and Ryan Phillips shook hands. And Ryan Phillips, it was Darian's biggest nemesis in the CFL. I'm like, stay away from him. I know you're both retired, but we don't want... Because remember, speaking of turnovers, the Lions fans, whenever they would play, those memes would go up on social media, like the Pillsbury turnovers with Darian's face and stuff like that on the box. And I'm like... Yeah, because Darian had a penchant for just throwing it Ryan's way, and somehow he would come down with it. So I'm like, oh, man, it's funny. And if you're wondering, hey, did I miss Double Talk this week? No, it was a busy weekend for Darian. We let him get a chance to get back home to his family, get reacclimatized and all of that. So it's going to be the Friday edition of Double Talk tomorrow, just after 5, right here on 620 CKRM with our now Plaza of Honor and 2-time Grey Cup champion quarterback, Darian Durant. All right, it's time to take a break on the all-new Sports Cage. We've got SJHL hockey we're going to talk after 5 o'clock with Jamie Neugebauer and the Notre Dame Hounds. They didn't do well last night. There was an incredible save coming out of that game, and we're going to talk to Jamie about where he thinks the team can be by maybe the Christmas break and then maybe by about Valentine's Day, as they're a young club that's coming together. It's the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. If you're listening, thank you. And if you're watching our stream at sportscage.com, give us a like, and give us a follow. We'll be right back after this. You've got 11 games in the NHL tonight, and we had the debut of Inside the NHL with Eric Francis earlier this afternoon. If you missed that, you can always go find the podcast. You can do that on Spotify, or you can just go to our website at sportscage.com. Good to chat with Eric again. Forecast for tonight, clear down to -2. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 12. Now, that weather, that's for everybody, but that's more for me. I've been avoiding blowing out the underground sprinklers, but now that we're getting down to freezing temperatures, Dave, being a homeowner sucks. Like, just there's you know this. There's always something to do. There's always something to do. And then the kids were splashing water in the second floor bathroom, and it went through the vent, and now there's a stain on the ceiling in the kitchen, and I'm like, oh man, and yeah.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the sprinklers, right? Because you never want to do it too early. But then you also, right, you definitely don't want to do it too late. And then there's always the worry that you've got in the fall and just before you turn them on again in the spring. Did I do it right? You know what I mean? Like, did something break? And right now out at Deer Valley, they're thinking, heck with that. We don't care. They've gone ahead and they announced, did you see this? They've announced that they're reopening this weekend. That's awesome. I know that I got buddies that are saying, yeah, I'll go out for a round this weekend. You can book online, deervalleygolf.ca. But yeah, they're reopening Friday to Sunday this week.
Yeah, because I was talking with my wife, and she's like, well, we got to go get Halloween costumes for the kids. I'm like, well, I got to blow out the sprinklers. And have you seen the price of Halloween candy this year? Like, I get it. It's inflation. It's not new. It's been a dark cloud for the past 4 years or whatever. But that same box of 120 Nestle, with the Kit Kat and the Aero and the Coffee Crisp, remember that used to be $15.99? And now it's $26.99. And I'm like, oh.
Well, you want to know stress. It's no surprise, right? We live in a new neighborhood, new to us. And so we don't know what to anticipate, because where we were living before in Saskatoon, we would have 350 to 400 kids every year, just because that was a neighborhood and we had a whole bunch of stuff going on. So what do we do now? Like, we don't want to have too little, but we obviously don't want to have too much. Dave, here's the thing. And I don't win a lot of arguments when it comes to being married, but we do not need to buy Halloween candy on August going into Labor Day long weekend just because it's out for sale, because we're now on our third box, and what's the day today? We're 14 days away from Halloween, and we're already on our third box of those chocolate bars. Oh no, we're gonna buy it and save it. No, that never happens. It just it comes, and then it goes from there. Hey, if you've got a killer costume and you want to show it off to as many people as possible, including Dave Thomas's house on the night of, don't forget, at the next Saskatchewan Rough Rider game, what are they calling this? The 13th fan edition? When the Riders will wrap up things against the Stamps, you can wear your costume to the game. Yeah, that should be plays and treats available.
And I do love, because some people will go out of the way. Now, the guy who I always have ultimate respect for, and it doesn't need to be this game, is the guy that dresses up like the Rider Pirate. He's at every game. He was at dinner with Doubles. So to me, but you just know there's going to be people to be like, no, this is my chance. Maybe I'm not every game dress up person, but it's Halloween and I'm going all out.
Well, and Curtis just put it up on the screen as Colson's laughing, is the Lucha's Purifoy, right? He comes out in the mask around Halloween and he puts it on. It's just, okay, sure. Costume advice for you, though. Again, sometimes we as dads, right, Maz? You have to go ahead and you have to take the reins when it comes to taking care of the Halloween in your home, because you just never know. And the worst one was my dad dressed my brothers and I up as clowns, and he couldn't find the makeup that Mom had got to put the clown face on, so he used her lipstick for a week. We had to go to school with so there you go. Word to the wise, gentlemen. Don't do that. May seem like a good idea at the time, but don't do that.
So are you going to weave this into your Weyburn High School story of dancing with other linebackers in gym class wearing lipstick that you couldn't wash off?
No. But in Weyburn, if there's somebody right now, I bet you they come in on the text line and they will remind me of the time that they had to call in like all kinds of police officers and the riot stuff from around because there was an egg fight over Halloween in the bustling metropolis of Weyburn. It was bad. T-shirts were made.
What?
Well, I survived the big egg war of whatever. I can't remember what year it was. But yeah, but then, of course, the front page of the paper, you know what that was, right? Front page.
See, but that's back in the days of Halloweening, where people used to give out apples and pennies and all of that. Now, my kids nowadays would just automatically assume that's garbage. You can't do that anymore. You can't make somebody a caramel popcorn ball and put it into a Ziploc bag and say, there you go. Like they would throw it back at you. And yeah, to do that. All right, it's time to take a break. When we come back, Glen Suitor. He sees the CFL like nobody else, and we're going to see what he thinks about the Vernon Adams Jr. starting for the BC Lions this week. And was it a week too late? Was this all part of a master plan? We'll get Glen Suitor's take. You're listening to the all-new Sports Cage on 620 CKRM. There's one game in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League tonight. The North Battleford North Stars are in Notre Dame to take on the Hounds. Face-off is going to be at 7:30, and in about a half hour's time, JB Neugebauer, play-by-play voice of the Notre Dame Hounds, will be joining the show. It's Maz and Dave Thomas filling in for Barney. He's going to be back next week. All right, I have a legitimate football question, and it will all tie into yesterday. So, Colson, let's get to this. Let's talk with Glen Suitor, our guy on the CFL.
The all-new Sports Cage with CFL and Saskatchewan Roughrider legend Glen Suitor is brought to you by Quality Tire. With 9 locations across Saskatchewan, visit qualitytire.ca.
Hey, Suits, for everybody out there that is watching and listening, can you explain what is the Oklahoma drill in football?
Well, it's not fun. Let's put it that. Let me start with that. It is a physical drill where you're in a circle and you circle the guys up. There's one guy in the middle, and that guy will change. And then the coach will call out a number or a player, and you have to square up, turn, and find who's coming at you. You make contact, and then the next guy comes. And the coach can speed up or slow down that process depending on how the guy that's taking those hits is doing in the middle. So it is a very physical drill. There's different versions of it, slightly different versions of it. But it's kind of one you do early in training camp. At the pro level, you're not testing toughness. So if you get to the pro level, you're tough enough to play football. But at the lower levels, you see that early in training camps because you want to set the bar for the expectation of the physicality of the game.
Okay, quick question: does it hurt? Like, it can be painful, right? Like you can get your block knocked out. Okay. Now here's the reason why.
You can get knocked on your butt because that circle, if you are looking ahead and the coach yells out a name and you can't find the guy in time and you just turn around in time to barely brace yourself, you're going to take a good hit. I mean, they're coming from 5 yards away almost. So it's a physical, reaction type of drill that you have to be on your toes or you can get knocked around pretty good. Now, as far as, does it hurt? Not really. You're padded up. I mean, kids love it. I mean, you love to hit each other. I mean, that's part of the fun of it.
So here's the reason why I ask. Yesterday, Barney and Sharky had Jermarcus Hardrick of the Saskatchewan Roughriders come in and co-host the show for 2 hours between 4 and 6. And apparently, when he came in to the Century Studios at 620 CKRM, he said to Curtis, who is our technical producer, Curtis, I don't want to misquote you, but basically he's like, you look like you're a big guy. I want to run the Oklahoma drill against you. And I was like, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I was.
You do not stand a chance against that mountain of a man. Even if he was going at a quarter of a speed, you are not coming out of there alive.
Yeah, no, I'm not exactly like a small guy. Like to put it out there for the people in Radio Land. I'm 6 foot and I'm like 200 pounds.
Okay.
Don't want to do the Oklahoma drill though.
Not against Jamarcus Hardrick, you know.
He's only on one leg, and he'd probably still throw you around.
We're talking 350 there, at least 350.
I know, and it's funny. And you watch the interview, and he's such a nice man, and he's so well spoken. I was like, well, I wonder if he was just marking territory when he came in to be like, yeah, me and you, Oklahoma, and just to like, listen, this game is about intimidation, Suits. You know that. If I'm living rent free in your head, whether I'm a yard off the ball or 5 feet away in a radio studio, I am going to dominate and I am going to win. All right, let's get to some football. The big news, what I think was big news, and maybe it's a week too late, the BC Lions have announced that Vernon Adams Jr. will be starting this weekend when the Montreal Alouettes and the BC Lions clash. Mm-hmm. Was this on the right timeline, or was this a week too late? Because remember, a week ago, they were playing for a home playoff game at Mosaic Stadium in Regina, and the Lions did not look good last Saturday.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on this bone, and let's start with the fact that what's happened with the Lions and the inconsistency with the Lions has actually not a lot to do with Nathan Rourke's play. I mean, that play in the second play from scrimmage in Regina was a great example of kind of what's happened when this team has played poorly, and it's played poorly too often over the last month. In Vancouver, and when it bounces off a receiver's chest into the hands of AJ Allen, who takes it to the house. I mean, Nathan Rourke can't throw it any better than that. Now, I'm not building an alibi for Nathan because this move, I think, from Coach Campbell was inevitable with the way the team's going because of what he said when he signed Nathan Rourke back. I mean, Coach Campbell at that time said the only reason or the only way I was going to be okay with this signing was if Vernon Adams was part of our plans and part of our team. In other words, we might go with almost a 2-quarterback system. That's where he didn't say that part, but I read between the lines in his statement that that's what he was implying, that he believed in the 5-1 start of Vernon Adams and Nathan Rourke's upside and potential is through the roof great. So, bring those two guys in. We've got 2 legit starters. They're both going to be part of it. He's not training VA. So now, after losing the way they've lost over the last few weeks, especially the Regina game, I mean, that game in Saskatchewan, they just, come on, that wasn't that. I hate to say this because you hate to think that the effort wasn't there, and I don't want to take anything away from the Rider win, but that was bad. That was maybe their worst loss of the season. So I'm not surprised by the change. I will say this, guys. I just talked to Vernon Adams literally an hour ago, and as much as I still believe, and my narrative on Nathan Rourke won't change, I believe Nathan Rourke will lead whomever he's leading. If that's BC for the next few years, he's going to lead them to a championship. I am convinced of his skill. I'm convinced of his fundamentals. I think he is a championship caliber quarterback. And that's a very small sample size to say that, but I truly believe Nathan Rourke can be that guy. Having said that, Vernon Adams can write a heck of a book right here. I mean, if you guys go and talk to young kids and Vernon Adams wins this game against Montreal, finishes the regular season, starts in the playoffs, and takes them on a run to the Grey Cup at home as the starter after how he handled the whole transition with Nathan Rourke coming in, that is a story of team-first mentality and leadership, of perseverance when something is out of your control, a decision is out of your control. He was hurt when Nathan first got to Vancouver, so the first 2 games, he wasn't available anyway. But after that, there was a choice to be made, and Coach Campbell stuck with Nathan Rourke. So, I just think they have both handled this like true pros, and that gives them a chance. Of the teams in the Western playoffs, they're ranked 3rd, and they should be. And it's probably right now a distant 3rd. I think, as I said on Tuesday, I think The Riders have closed the gap on the Bombers a ton, and the BC Lions, the way they played the last month and a half, a distant third in that grouping. But because of the way the quarterbacks have handled it in Vancouver, they still have the potential to upset the group. I still think they have the potential. Outside, yes. A mountain to climb, yes. But with those two quarterbacks and the way they've handled it, just first-class, professional, team-first guys.
Glen Suitor, I had a coach growing up that told me my job is to put you in position to succeed. Has Rick Campbell not put himself in the ultimate position to fail? In meaning that, so Vernon Adams Jr., like you say, right? What a great story. If he comes in and he does everything right this week, then Rick Campbell's got to make a decision. What do I do next week in the playoffs when I've got this guy that we're paying all this money and we got this other guy here? Or conversely, maybe things don't go so well for Vernon Adams Jr., or it's a question mark as to whether or not he was really that good. Then you don't potentially have anybody that you're confident in going into 2 weeks. So is this the ultimate no-win for the GM and head coach of the BC Lions?
No, I wouldn't say that. Like, I don't know that for the coach, for the head coach. It certainly does for a president, an owner for sure. When you're talking about, the guy they're paying a lot of money and the guy that's starting isn't being paid as much money. I don't think even at the at the NFL level where the dollars are substantially different, that should ever be part of the process. I really don't. I know people will say, come on, reality is it is part of the product. If you get starter money, you're the starter. Well, if you start doing that as a coach, the locker room knows. The locker room, wants to see the guy who's earned it. And I think this is not necessarily a case where VA has earned it over the play of Nathan Rourke. It's just a case of this team is stagnant, and they want to see what this guy who started the season 5-1 and averaging around 350 yards a game, and in MOP discussions in the first third of the season, they want to see if they can bring some of that magic to help this team get out of its rut. So let's see if that happens. But, I don't think it paints anyone in any corner. If this goes well, I shouldn't guarantee. I won't make any guarantees, and I don't want to speak for the coach, so I won't do that. But if this goes well for Vernon Adams and they win against Montreal, and he starts the playoff game and looks good, then he'll keep rolling with Vernon Adams. I truly believe he'll do that. And then in the off season, let's see what they do. I'm not going to change my narrative on my belief in Nathan Rourke. I think Nathan Rourke fundamentally is maybe one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in my time in broadcasting. And I covered Ricky Ray and a lot of guys. This guy fundamentally has the work ethic, the footwork, the leadership skills, the accuracy, the processing time. It's as good as I've ever seen. When he went down to the NFL, I felt like he'd be in the Pro Bowl in 2 years if he got a real look in the NFL. And that's just judging skill, not money, not glitz, not glam, not ratings. It's simply breaking down the skill level of a quarterback from all the years of experience. And I think both these guys, what impresses me though, and it reminds me a little, and I hate to bring up my time playing, but it reminds me a little of Ken Austin and Tom Burgess in our locker room. Ken Austin and Tom Burgess in our locker room are two starting quarterbacks, two very good starting quarterbacks. Slightly different. One was better against zone looks, one was better against man, but both good leaders in the room, both different style leaders, and never divided our room. And I think that's what's happening in BC. That's what gives them hope. They're a distant third out of three in the Western final ratings, but that doesn't mean they can't surprise people and take a run. And their quarterbacks both of these guys are giving them a chance to actually accomplish that. And I'm cheering for VA. It doesn't change how I feel about Rourke, but I'm cheering for VA in that he has been such a great pro and a great teammate. This is what this game is all about. It teaches you that you have to be a great teammate to succeed. If you're not, it will never happen. It forces you to do it, and we need more of it in society. So it's a good lesson to learn.
Okay, moving on to this week. And again, I love your thoughts. Thanks, Glenn. And, you know, this is where I give you and Luke the ultimate respect. You've been there. You've done that. You understand what it means to be a professional football player and inside the locker room. Tomorrow in Hamilton, the Calgary Stampeders take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Now, the game doesn't mean a lot in the standings, but obviously we in the media, right? The media guy in me that's never been in a locker room like you have say, oh, you know, jobs are on the line and, oh, you're making a statement for next year. And there's all this. And then there's the narrative, well, you know, guys are going to be making business decisions, right? Because they've got to worry about how they're going to feed their family next year and they don't want to go down that road. How, as a player, have you seen other players approach games like this where you're fighting for a job, but you're also making sure that you take care of business?
It's a great question. And it's a question that I'm going to sound a little bit like I'm going in two opposite directions here. But one is the pro that has only one group of people to be accountable for, and that's their teammates. So when you're sitting in a locker room, especially one that's been built right with a real good culture, and you're sitting in that room, and I looked across to Bobby Jurison and Roger Aldag. Now they're looking across to the same type of players, any one of these guys in these rooms. And they're saying, I'm accountable to him. And if I let him down, even if it doesn't have anything to do with the standings or whatever, if I let him down, it's going to be hard for me to look in the mirror for 6 months in the off season. That's motivation enough. And if it's not, you might have the wrong guys in the room. If you're not playing for each other in there and looking across the room and seeing guys and saying, that guy, I'm responsible. I want to be great for him. So that's the motivation, I think, that keeps you accountable to your play. But the reality is there's a difference between playoff hockey and regular season hockey. There's a difference between playoff football and regular season football, and there just is. And if you could bottle the intensity of playoff football, where one game you either go on or go home, if you could bottle that in the regular season, you'd be undefeated every year. So something happens to us as human beings when we do know it's now or never. You know, when you're on that on that edge, that ragged edge, and you're looking at it saying, if we don't get it done now, it's over. Season is done. This group of men that are in this locker room will never be the same again, because every year it changes. So if you love your locker room, you have that urgency when it comes to playoff time, and you can't bottle it and you can't figure it out. That's why almost always I say on the air that the coaches in the playoffs really don't need a pregame speech. All they really need to do is open the locker room door. Let the guys go. Because that's all you need. Just open the door. We're ready to go, right? Like, because that's the urgency that will automatically be there. And you can't really, I don't think you can duplicate it. I don't think you can, figure out how to get yourself there. It just automatically happens.
Rider legend Glen Suitor is on the Western Pizza guest hotline. He's a Grey Cup champion. We had a Grey Cup champion in town last weekend in Darian Durant, who went into the Plaza of Honor. It was good to see doubles. A lot of memories. And I know it won't happen maybe in the next year or two, but eventually Bo Levi Mitchell's name will be up at McMahon Stadium. And once all is said and done and the feelings are gone, how crazy is it that a quarterback that is not going to be in the playoffs is leading stat-wise and is put up, and at times it wasn't his fault when the receivers were dropping the ball, some incredible numbers. Tomorrow, Calgary takes on Hamilton, and it's a weird game because Bo staying or going? Is the Jake Mayer era over? Is Matthew Schultz going to come in and show the management? And a lot of people are questioning, is Dave Dickinson? And the thing is, the Stamps are missing the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. And they're making it sound like this is a regular occurrence. That's 2 decades. But the standard is so high for Stampeder football, missing the playoffs just doesn't happen. Are people overreacting? Let's start there. On the Dickinson front, they just had a bad year.
Yeah, well, it's really been 2. It's been 2 years. In fact, they haven't really been that team that we were used to 3 or 4 years, 5 years ago, with Dave Dickinson in charge when Bo was there. I mean, that team was dominant, and Bo's record was unbelievable when he was in Calgary. Mm-hmm. Since they made the change, and it's not all on Jake Maier. He's had his moments that he's looked great, and then not so great. So, but they haven't won in 2 years, really. So, the what have you done for me lately sort of cliche applies here when it comes to Dave Dickinson. I will say this: if they do decide to move on from Dave Dickinson, he'll be snapped up quickly. He'll be hired. He'll be hired immedately. In
a second, he would be hired.
Yeah, in that regard, I guess it is a bit of an overreaction to talk, to say that he should be fired and not get a chance to rebuild. But let me preface that, because the quarterback and coach are often tied at the hip really closely, especially when Dave Dickinson made the decision to move on from Bo and go with Jake Maier, and that decision has not produced playoff football or a chance at a Grey Cup. So that is going to change the dynamic for Jake Maier. Now, I'm not saying he's going to disappear from the league. I think he still has upside potential, but there's going to be probably 2 quarterbacks that every team in the league is going to be very interested in the offseason. One is Davis Alexander in Montreal, and who is now 4-0 as a starter in Montreal when he's filled in for Cody, but he's probably should be 5-0 because he came in early after the start of Caleb Evans and won that game. So he's shown that he can get it done in a short sample size. And then, of course, VA and Nathan Rourke here. And then Nathan Rourke has signed a long-term deal. VA is a free agent at the end of the year. Trey Ford is also in this conversation. He's a free agent at the end of the year. What do teams look and think about that? So Calgary has to make some decisions quickly. And if they stick with Dave and Dave sticks with Jake, that might be a tough sell in the market. But if you have to make a change at the quarterback position, there's going to be a couple of guys that'll be very interesting on the market early in free agency. Or maybe before then in a trade possibility.
Glen, Suitor, don't want to monopolize your time here on this Thursday evening, but Toronto-Ottawa is an intriguing matchup for me. I feel terrible that Ottawa is as beat up and banged up as they are. Do they even have a shot against Toronto, considering all the injuries they have?
Yeah, I think this year parity has been there. I mean, I think this has really been a year if any team could win at any time. It's funny you make that mention of Bo Levi Mitchell leading in the league in stats and a team that's not in the playoffs. So many starting quarterbacks like Bo, including Bo, have been pulled at one time or another this year. That's another thing we just have not seen because of this parity and the roller coaster that most teams have gone through, including the Riders. So Toronto's gone through it as well. Toronto is a interesting team. I think, as with all due respect to the best team in the league, which is still Montreal, and they're the best team by record, and they've had first place wrapped up for a while. I still think Toronto can beat Montreal in a playoff game. I think Toronto can beat anyone in the league. And it starts with the physicality of the defense, because at some point this time of year, you've got to stop the run. I think the Toronto defense has been the one defense that's consistently been able to do that. It's even against Winnipeg and Brady Oliveira, and that's their bread and butter. So, I think Toronto is really intriguing. If they're underdogs and you're putting $5 on a game, and they're underdogs, Toronto might be a good bet. They won't be underdogs against Ottawa, obviously, but I just and that's a big game, because if Toronto wins that, they get home field.
All right. Are you working the BC game on Saturday against Montreal?
I am, and I got a chance to talk to both coaches today, and both are saying, both could actually rest starters. BC cannot improve their playoff positioning, and Montreal has been in first for 2 weeks. So basically, they could rest some starters, and neither guy is going to do this. They want to keep. Well, one team is doing it to try and get on track in BC. The other team says, we're going to keep pedal to the metal. We're going to keep with our standard. And that's why Montreal has the best record in the league. That approach.
All righty. He's one of the best, and he's ours. He's part of the Sports Cage. It's Glen Suitor. If you missed any part of this conversation, you can always go back and catch the podcast for Glen, Arash, Madani, or Eric Francis, who we had on earlier talking about the NHL, and you can get all of our podcasts at sportscage.com. Time to take a quick break. When we come back, Saskatchewan Junior League Hockey. There's only one game tonight, and it's in Notre Dame. We'll check in with the play-by-play voice of the Hounds next on 620 CKRM. There's one game in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League tonight. He's going to be a busy guy, but we got him for a few minutes here. The North Battleford North Stars are in Notre Dame to take on the Hounds. It's a 7:30 face-off. We're joined now by Jamie Neugebauer, the play-by-play voice of the Hounds. Now, taking a look at the standings, Jamie, we're 10 games in the Nutrien division with a 2-8 record. It's probably not the start that you envisioned. When we had Wade Klippenstein on earlier, we had talked about how teams had been practicing for a while before the Hounds were able to get their squad together. Is this a matter of they're basically getting through training camp to where other teams are to this point of the season and they're just finding their way?
I think at this point in the year, it's still early for everybody. It doesn't matter what your training camp is. We've also seen a lot of roster turnover throughout a lot of teams in the SJHL, so I wouldn't really use that as an excuse, to be honest with you. I think this is a very young Notre Dame team, as they usually are, as Dave will attest following the league for a while. They're always, either the youngest or one of the youngest teams. And, how long does it take a rookie to get used to junior hockey, being in the Western League, being at the SJHL, replacing 19, 20-year-olds? I don't know, 20, 30 games maybe before they really get a grip. So, I think the little details and little elements of the game that you need to do on a consistent basis to win hockey games is what's escaping them. It's maybe not so much the training camp element. You think the Melfort Mustangs, for example, last point here, they went all the way to the Centennial Cup finals, right? They lost in the finals to Collingwood in Oakville, and they started training camp a day after the Hounds. But a lot of people have the Melfort Mustangs number one in the SJHL in the power rankings. So, I don't know if I take that necessarily as a premise, but, maybe there's something to it. It's a young team. That's the bottom line, really.
Jamie, I don't know if it's me or not, and you alluded to the roster moves. Does it seem like there is a lot more roster moves to start this year than there normally are?
Yeah, I it's hard to say. I think it really has more to do with the fact that coaches are just not thrilled with their teams to start this year. Some years you have kind of 1, 2, 3, maybe super teams that are stacked and built for a year, and they get, their roster a little bit more continuity to it. So this year, there really isn't that super team. We saw Flin Flon a year ago, saw Battleford's 2 years ago, we saw Estevan 3 years ago, and a few teams below them in those years. There really isn't that team this year. So in a short answer, Dave, yes.
So the North Battleford North Stars, making headlines early on in the season, they lose their coach and general manager, and it was just, the press release was put out, and there was, for whatever the reasons, and nobody knows, I'm sure there are people are, but then you have Martin Smith, who, and when I read the press release, so he is a North Battleford North Star legend. What is he going to bring as head coach and GM to this team? Because they're only a couple points ahead of you in the standings. It's not like they're, shooting out the lights so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, he's just the head coach. The Wiley Riendeau, their longtime scouting guru, genius, really, is actually the general manager now. But that all to be said, The Battleford's North Stars started the year 0-2 under Gary Childerhose, and it didn't work out clearly there with Gary, and he had his issues and reasons why he took off. But since then, Battleford's has been 5-1-1. They're one of the few teams in the league that haven't lost a game in regulation when they score the first goal in a hockey game. I know it's still a small sample size. So, actually the Battleford's North Stars are ticking along just fine. They still have guys with that championship pedigree from a couple of years ago that also went to the Centennial Cup finals and also lost to the Centennial Cup finals that year to the Brooks Bandits. That was in Portage in Manitoba. But certainly, their roster, their leadership core has carried them well. And the big thing, and Dave knows this, this, Maz, it's all about goaltending, right? And the Battleford's North Stars, their goaltending was just okay, we'll say, until yesterday, when Gets Who arrives is Justin Merrick, who has significant Western Hockey League experience with the Portland Winterhawks. And he was terrific yesterday. I know the scoreboard, says 6-1, but the Hounds had 3-4 glorious scoring chances, including one that maybe is one of the best saves I've ever seen. So, to answer your question, I think the Battleford North Stars are doing absolutely just fine, and Marty Smith is, doing a good job as well.
You pointed that save out on social media, and that got me this morning. Like, how did he do that? But what we saw about 42 minutes ago here in downtown Regina was the Battleford's bus just pulling out of the hotel. So they're obviously headed your way. This is a back-to-back scenario for the Hounds, and I've seen it a couple of times in the schedule this year where a team will come in on consecutive nights to Wilcox. I think that's a cool opportunity for the Notre Dame Hound players to see the same team and then continue to learn. Like you mentioned, they're a young roster, so you get that opportunity to evolve just one night later. Is that a big advantage?
It's an advantage. I don't know if it's an advantage. I think the ice surface here should be an advantage. It's an Olympic ice surface. Teams don't play on it. I think it's neat for me as the media guy to really dig into a roster and get to watch a team over 2 games. And, we aren't really seeing either Marty Smith or Brett Pilkington for the Hounds change their rosters over much. The Hounds have, took out 2D, brought in 2 different D that are, maybe sort of 2 top 4D tonight. So the Hounds hope that the roster is a little bit more strengthened, perhaps. But yeah, it's very interesting to see. It kind of makes it a little bit of a playoff series, Dave. Like it's interesting because you get used to that. Coming in here and it's exciting to see the same team and see how maybe the game is different. But other than that, it's another hockey game. You can only take it one period at a time, and the Hounds are certainly hoping that it all goes very differently than it did yesterday.
Well, in Wilcox, it's one of the most impressive hockey rinks you're ever going to walk into when you see that wall of fame and see all of the alumni up there, no matter what the sport, and you just keep going and going and going. So Wade Klippenstein comes into the role as director of hockey for Notre Dame a few months back. What have you seen that he's done in a positive way as far as since joining? Well, it's funny, he's rejoining as a Hound or coming on board in version 2.0 in your estimation and what you've seen.
Yeah, it's a great question. The way that I've seen it with Wade is he's a people manager in maybe a way that we haven't had in the last couple of guys that have come in and inside of that chair. And obviously I have great love and respect for Dave Struch. I'm sure he's a guy that you guys know, with his time with the Regina Pats and around the Western Hockey League, and he was a great guy, but he was a hockey coach, and that's how, he tried to handle this whole apparatus here at Notre Dame, which is, one that has a lot of moving parts. And then before him, Ethan Morrow, the former NHLer, was in that seat too. Again, hockey coach, trying to get people to do this and go over there, and people are used to following my directions and whatnot. So yeah, no shots at those guys, but I think Wade is doing a terrific job, just handling people, speaking their language, speaking to teachers, not just hockey people. There's volleyball here, there's football here, there's soccer here, there's all the sports. So you can't just handle everybody like you're a hockey coach, and Wade is handling it a lot more like a CEO, I guess, in terms of moving all the moving pieces like they should, with with a little bit of gentleness and composure. And that's the 21st century, and you guys know that, right? Like, you need to speak to people with a little bit of respect and dignity. Not that those other guys didn't, but Wade has a great handle on sort of the human resource element of it. So he's doing a great job.
Doing a great job, I think, is the entire league in the idea and the motto. stay here, play here, right? Keeping the local Saskatchewan players at home in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League playing. And obviously, one of the many benefits that there are to being able to stay closer to home and play Junior A hockey is the opportunity to, of course, advance your education and playing NCAA. Jamie Neugebauer, you've got probably your fingers closest to the pulse of the entire league than anyone that I know. There are waves in the Western Hockey League and the CHL with the opportunity, it would seem, that the NCAA is going to allow major junior players to play NCAA hockey. What is the feeling around junior hockey and the SJHL?
Yeah, I mean, it's increased competition. I know there's some people that are upset about it, saying, we're going to lose kids and it's going to be a lot harder for our teams and players to get those NCAA premium scholarships and whatnot. I just think, competition is better for everybody. You got to have a good program. It's all about relationships. Recruiting is about relationships, being it football, be it hockey, be it soccer, whatever the sport is. If you have a good relationship, if kids trust you, their parents trust you, their agents trust you, then those kids will come. It doesn't matter, whether or not the NCAA D1 route is flooded with, Western Hockey League kids all of a sudden, because not everybody in the Western Hockey League, here's a newsflash, fellas, want to do homework. That's the bottom line.
What?
If people go to school, you got to have to do homework, right? So that's just the reality of the situation. I'm not personally worried about it. It's not my job to recruit players, I guess. But I don't know. I guess I'm sure it depends on the person, but I'm not that worried about it.
So last week on the show, we were talking about the true unsung heroes of hockey, and it's parents, it's bus drivers. There's a lot of long trips in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. Outside of Notre Dame, what is your favorite rink in the SJHL to broadcast from? What rink do you look forward to going to call a game?
The easy answer is the Whitney Forum up in Flin Flon. Dave knows all about that. There's some great ones. Obviously, Dave, you've been around too, but the Whitney Forum, I was describing it to my wife a couple days ago, and I was talking about how it's like you step onto a movie set and it's a movie made to be a junior hockey movie where you just, there's passion, you love it, and it's like a little NHL team up there, and people love it, and everything is geared towards the Bombers. Everything is geared towards Bomber game night at the Whitney Forum. So, just the juice that you feel there. And then just from a beauty standpoint, obviously the Affinity Place there in Estevan, you feel, it's a real professional rink. I feel like there's no question at all that a Western Hockey League team could be there, and the community would get behind it in a great way too. So, a lot of fun, both those places. I've had, great time anywhere I've gone in the SJ, but those are my two favorites for sure.
I like your choices. Dave, I'm okay with that.
Dave, I don't know that the words beauty and Estevan have been used in the same sentence a lot ever, but it just happened on the SportsCage. So that's all I'm saying. Jamie, thank you for your time. It's face-off tonight, 7:30 in Wilcox. North Battleford North Stars taking on those Notre Dame Hounds. Hey, let's break that Martin Smith win streak since he's taken over. I mean, tonight is the night to do it. All right, we're gonna have we'll have you. We'll have you back on the show here. We're the voice for local sports in Saskatchewan. This is 620 CKRM. We're going to take a break. Just a couple of things football-wise. Jeremy O'Day will be on the Coach's Show on Monday on the all-new SportsCage just after 4:30 with Barney. There won't be any more clarity as to who or what, but it's going to be a chance to talk to JL. One of the questions that I had already texted to Barney, I want to know. We see Roland Milligan now as the Roland Milligan that is the league's most outstanding player. I want to know the story of when J.O. and his staff first caught wind of a Roland Milligan. Was it in person? Was it on tape? Where was it? What team? What game? And did you know, instantly, we've got to try and find a way to get his rights? Because all of these guys that we see now that are excelling, they all have a story from somewhere. And especially someone like that we didn't sign as a free agent, that somewhere along the way, that recruiting or scouting pipeline had to come into play.
The question I'd like to know is At what point, again, all season long, right? So we have had 4 different weeks where we have started the same offensive line, right? At different points in the season, not consecutive. At what point Did Jeremy O'Day call his guys or was in contact with, right, his peeps, his scouts, his whomever, him and Kyle Carson? At what point did he call somebody and they said, you need another offensive lineman? Like, what? Like, at some point, you got to think he was exhausting that pipeline.
It's like when you've gone to the same store or something in the same day again and again. Like you go back to like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Rona for the third time, and it's the same cashier, and you're like, you got to be the worst do-it-yourself ever, because you're buying the same 2x4 or whatever it is again, man. Oh, man. Oh, and then the other football note, there was no double talk on Tuesday with Darian because of the holiday, so we're going to do double talk with Darian tomorrow. Darian Durant, that is, just after 5 o'clock on the all-new SportsCage. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this before we wrap up the show. We're scoreboard watching. They're in the 8th inning in Cleveland, and the Guardians are leading the Yankees thanks to a Kyle Manzardo 2-run home run in the 3rd inning. You've got your Guardians. I still want to say, to me, that's Cleveland is the Guardians are leading the Yankees. No, just a second. It's 3-3. I was going to say 3-1. It's tied 3-3. Check that, Maz. We're about 20 minutes away from the first pitch between the Mets and the Dodgers. Dodgers leading that series 2-1. There's 11 games in the NHL tonight. Let's run this down. Kings at Canadiens, Stars at Capitals, Eric Francis' favorite team. By the way, if you missed the debut of Inside the NHL with Eric Francis, brought to our friends at Southie Mainline Chrysler, you can catch the podcast at sportscage.com. Devils at Senators, the Golden Knights at the Lightning, Sabres at Blue Jackets. Are the Sabres ever going to get good, no matter who they're coaching? Like, are they ever going to live up to their potential?
You got to think sometime, but I don't know. That is such a deep problem with that organization. And yes, when you think they got it figured out, they don't.
They're the Cleveland Browns of the NHL. They'll just never get it. See, here's the thing. The Canucks are in Florida to play the Panthers. And if you're on that road trip, do you really care? It's Florida, South Florida. You want to have a good time. We mail it in. There's probably a great club we get to go to after the game.
Rick Tocchet won't allow that to happen on the road. You know that. Especially when the team's still winless.
Well, Rick Tocchet probably brought his golf clubs on the trip. Okay. Let's see here. Rangers at Red Wings, Oilers at Predators. Ooh. Will the Predators get their first win? Islanders at Blues. Patrick Waugh. Sharks at Blackhawks, and the Flyers are at the Kraken. Are we buying Kraken stock this year? Or was that just a fluke a couple of years ago that they actually had a good year?
That was a fortunate start, I would suggest. But Edmonton has got Nashville's number, and they've had it for years and years. And look out.
If Chris Getzlaf was a Calgary Stampeder killer, Leon Draisaitl in his career in the NHL has been a Nashville Predator killer. Like, I love when they throw the stats up. It's like the goals, the assists. It's kind of like he shows up on Broadway and he's already +2. And we haven't even gone through warm-up yet. If you're a bit of a... Remember Johnny Carson when he would do the bit Karnak? The double C's across the board there. They have no idea what I just said. No. They have no idea who Johnny Carson is, and they have no idea who Karnak is. Google it, kids. If you're that guy or gal and you're like, no, I've got it on lockdown. I know who's going to have a great year in the National Hockey League, and I'm going to win some money doing it. The Kennison Super Draft is back. Barney started talking about this the other day. And the one thing I like about Barney, and sometimes, trust me, him and I will fight about a lot of things. And I'm like, how do you care so deeply about things like hockey drafts where I'm like, I'm okay. I don't mind them, but I am not 3 hours of homework invested on 2 different computer screens at home in the basement trying to build a roster. That's just not happening.
It's funny. In my left hand, and I don't want to mess up things too much, there's Barney's entry that he left here for the Super Draft. And there's a piece of me that wants to go against every pick that he's made and put in my own. But you know what's going to happen then, right? What will then happen is that's going to be the winning one because I went against all of my instincts, right? It's just like the old George Costanza. Go against your instincts and things will work out for the best. And that's what will happen. So I'm leaving Barney's entry as best you can. You can go get yours online, by the way. You don't have to steal Barney's.
Okay, so open it up. Like who? Like okay, so open it up. Who are some of the people he's got marked off? Like I mean, does everybody's going to pick McDavid and Draisaitl? You would think.
Yeah, that's funny. The only one that he's got a firm, like, so it's a checkbox, right? So instead of checking the box, he's got McDavid like completely covered to make sure that he has got him. So that's one. The other ones are like, you can see where he's leaned on the pen, but he hasn't actually made the mark. So, like, again, I would have thought he would have gone with Draisaitl for sure. Who's Barney's team, guys? Barney is
he's whoever he can go to there and buy a t-shirt at. Like, I don't know, does he, like the other day, all of a sudden he's an Alabama fan. The Tim and Nick Saban have a connection in the years past. Yeah. And I've seen him like, so.
He's whoever's got the best chance of hitting the money line.
Okay, that's what it is, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Something like that.
The allegiance is to the gambling numbers, not to the actual team. But you know this, Dave. You've been in enough hockey drafts. Those big guys, it's never them. It's those quiet sleepers. Like nobody can pick that. Someone will pop off and have a career year, and you just randomly took them, and that's what will end up putting you over the top.
I noticed there's a mark, but no indication that Sidney Crosby. So that's an interesting one for me. I would have thought that.
Wow, really going out on a limb there, taking a flyer on a guy with 1,600 points.
Austin Matthews isn't selected. That's funny. Like, I don't know what he was thinking there. Okay, I'm going to put this away because it's going to actually drive me nuts all night. Go online.
That's
Keniston Super Draft.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thanks to everybody that was on the show today. Glen Suitor, Jamie Neugebauer, Arash Madani, and Eric Francis. If you missed any part of the show, you can catch it in the podcast form at sportscage.com. When you're there, give us a like, give us a follow, and when the stream starts, it'll pop up, and we will be back on your radio tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock right here on 620 CKRM. That'll do it for the Sports Cage today. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.